Chapter 1838. Upon hearing foundation establishment, Xiaohua's face immediately became bitter. He smiled apologetically and said, "If I could build my foundation, of course I wouldn't stay here for long. Although I don't know who seniors are looking for, it's obvious, sigh. Haha, the Golden Core Cultivator and Foundation Establishment Cultivator didn't say anything else. After exiting the spell formation, they exchanged a few words with each other and flew towards the forbidden area where Yi Yuan was. Xiaohua's left hand, which he cupped his hands to send them off, slightly opened a slit. His silver eyes had just closed. That's strange. Xiaohua's expression was the same as usual. When he turned around and closed the spell formation, he was still pondering. In that Golden Core Senior's meridians, the amount of true essence flowing like water doesn't seem to be as much as the Foundation Establishment Seniors. However, in his lower dantian, there's a thumb-sized resplendent ball. That must be the Golden Core. In this Foundation Establishment Cultivator's lower dantian, there's also some solidification. There are even some vortexes. I'm afraid he's also on the verge of condensing his Golden Core. But why can't I see their bodies, bones, and other things? Why can my physical body see it? Moreover, my bones and other parts of my body are blocked? In addition, one of these two seniors' meridians is the same. It's exactly the same as the meridians I tempered at the 12th layer of Qi refinement. However, the second meridian is different. Presumably, the Foundation Establishment Cultivators choose different mental cultivation methods, so the meridians they open are also different. Xiaohua flew towards the Immortal's cave while thinking, I haven't seen a Golden Core cultivation method, but from what I saw with my delirium eyes, it should be to refine the true essence in the two meridians that have already been opened, condensing that true essence into a Golden Core. It shouldn't be to open a third meridian outside the second meridian. In other words, all cultivators only have two meridians? Isn't that a bit too little? After all, there are still a lot of meridians in the body. Xiaohua was a bit confused, but then he mocked himself. Damn it, one meridian is already connected to the whole body. Two meridians complement each other, forming the power of yin and yang. It runs through the whole body, so what's the point of having so many meridians? Who else would be like me, who would cultivate an additional meridian for the sake of that sliver of memory? Even if you build your foundation and refine one more meridian, you'll have magic power but your lifespan won't increase. It's not as profound as the magic power of a core condensation cultivator, who would joke around with their life and refine one more meridian. This young master had just tempered one meridian during Qi refinement and was scolded by master to the point that I was almost expelled from the sect. If any fool tempered another meridian during foundation establishment, wouldn't he be directly smacked to death by master? Qian Yuhua's death really annoyed the Qian Thunder Palace. Originally, they listened to the lecture in front of the practitioner of Jindan realm and went out to look after the alchemy furnace. But in the blink of an eye, the natal spiritual tablet was broken. There was no Ling Li pill in the cave as Qian Yuhua said. When they asked the disciples in the cave, they didn't know where their master went. The Heavenly Thunder Palace used various methods to try to find out where Qian Yuhua had died, but in the end, everyone's eyes were focused on the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden's Yequan Valley, which was not far from the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden. After all, within the area that the Heavenly Thunder Palace's elders had circled out using a secret technique, only the Yequan Valley had not been carefully searched. But who dared to search the Yequan Valley? For a disciple in the late stage of foundation establishment, would they lose a disciple in Jindan realm? Therefore, Xiaohua's heart should be at ease. Of course, Xiaohua didn't have time to think so much. He was full of energy and focused on refining the fire marrow flame crystal flame in his meridians. He wanted to accumulate genuine qi and finish practicing the last bit of the prairie fire cultivation method as soon as possible. He wanted to reach the peak of the 18th hurdle of Lianqi realm and reach foundation establishment as soon as possible. Damn it. Thinking that Cui Hongshan forced Xiaohua to call him senior fellow apprentice, Xiaohua wanted to smack this guy to death. Well, it was like smacking an annoying fly. However, when Xiaohua just entered the late stage of Lianqi realm, something happened again. Helplessness's voice-transmitting rune came. Helplessness's voice-transmitting rune didn't say anything, only indifferently telling Xiao Hua to return to Myriad Thunder Valley. Just from the tone of the voice-transmitting rune, Xiao Hua could tell how much helplessness didn't want to see him, but because of some reason he had no choice but to see him. Of course, listen to the last sentence of the voice-transmitting rune. You haven't reached Foundation Establishment yet? Although it was a question, it was definitely true. When Xiao Hua received the voice-transmitting rune, to tell the truth, he also didn't want to go. First, he didn't want to see helplessness's expression. Second, he didn't want to see Cui Hongshan. When fellow apprentices met, they had to greet each other. But Cui Hongshan wanted to suppress Xiao Hua, so he had to make Xiao Hua call him senior fellow apprentice. But why would Xiao Hua hang on to him? I'll go. Master summoning, how can I not go? Xiao Hua smiled wryly. He put all the things he needed into a storage bag and also put the puppets working in the medicinal garden in the eastern ridge into his space. Only then did he open the magic formation and use an ordinary flight technique to fly towards Myriad Thunder Valley. During this time, although no more cultivators from the Heavenly Thunder Palace came to harass them, the disciples on duty from the Thunderous Thunder Palace did come to the Blaze Dawn Grass. When they saw the changes in the spiritual aura of the Eastern Ridge, that disciple also felt it was strange and reported the abnormalities to the Thunderous Thunder Palace's steward. The Thunderous Thunder Palace's steward also sent someone to take a look. When he saw that Xiao Hua had actually leveled a lot of the medicinal garden and planted a lot of spiritual plants, he was also very happy. The Thunderous Thunder Palace actually rewarded some medicinal pills for aura-refining disciples. Moreover, the tone of the disciple who came to take a look revealed a hint of something that made Xiao Hua extremely unhappy. Originally, the Eastern Ridge only had one type of Blaze Dawn Grass, so Xiao Hua was naturally able to take care of it all by himself. But now that the spiritual aura of the world was abundant, this place naturally had to be rebuilt into a medicinal garden like before. A medicinal garden with all kinds of spiritual plants, so Xiao Hua definitely couldn't do it by himself. It was possible that the Thunderous Thunder Palace would also send some disciples over to take care of the garden together with Xiao Hua. Of course, this was also what that disciple said. As for how many disciples they would send and who they would send, everything was unknown. At least, when Xiao Hua left, there was still no news. Xiao Hua cultivated while flying. He flew very slowly and only arrived in front of Helpless Immortal's cave after a long time. Without waiting for him to land, Helpless divine sense swept over him. Conveniently, that mocking voice sounded again. Sure enough, you still haven't built your foundation. Moreover, your flying speed is also very slow. You're really not advancing but retreating. Previously, when Xiang Yang sent a message, you could definitely arrive in 4 hours. What about now? You're actually so slow. Alas, you don't want to see me? Xiao Hua landed and quickly walked to the front of the Immortal's cave. He smiled apologetically and said, "Disciple, wasn't this disciple thinking about a difficult cultivation problem on the way here?" A difficult problem? What kind of difficult problem did you have this time? Why don't you tell me about it? Helpless sat on the seat of honor in the Immortal's cave with Zhuo Minghui at his side. He seemed to be very interested as he asked this question. How could Xiao Hua have any difficult problems? He was just casually talking about it. He thought Helpless would listen to him and really didn't expect him to ask him. Chapter 1839. Disciple is thinking, if a foundation establishment cultivator can open and refine a second completely different meridian, then can a core formation cultivator also refine a third completely different meridian? Xiao Hua said almost without thinking. Hearing Xiao Hua's question, Helplessly was first stunned, then his face revealed ridicule. He turned to Zhuo Minghui and said, "Did you see? What did your husband say? Can he reach foundation establishment like this? He's only at the peak of the Qi refinement realm, and he's already considering the matter of condensing his core. This kind of ambitious person is the first I've seen in my life." Zhuo Minghui's face also revealed a trace of worry, and she said with a smile, "Xiao Hua, you aren't thinking about how to reach foundation establishment. Why are you thinking about so many irrelevant things?" Disciple occasionally thinks about it. Xiao Hua said embarrassedly, Disciple's Prairie Fire Cultivation Technique and the Fury Flame Technique Master left for Disciple to use in reaching foundation establishment are different. Therefore, Disciple thought about it so much. This guy is currently thinking about the problems of us late-stage foundation establishment cultivators. Where would he have time to think about foundation establishment? Helplessly mocked. Do you think I should answer or not? This is a problem I only thought of when I got the core formation cultivation technique. Zhuo Minghui sighed and said, Husband, it's better to say it. If Xiaohua keeps thinking by himself, maybe he'll think of the wrong thing. If you want to say it, then say it. I'm not in the mood. Xiaohua, Master's wife, also doesn't want to say too much to you. You only need to remember that all the cultivators in our Xiaoyu continent's cultivation world only cultivate 2 meridians. 1 main meridian, 1 auxiliary meridian, 1 yang meridian. They complement each other and bring out the best in each other. It's not like no one has ever tried cultivating 1 more meridian. However, not to mention cultivating 1 more meridian, even if you cultivate 10 more meridian, your magic power may increase, but your realm absolutely won't increase. There's nothing you don't know about foundation establishment. Foundation establishment's true essence is completely different from Qi refinement's true Qi, and its power is also different. Core formation and foundation establishment's true essence are also completely different. After core formation, the magic power is absolutely several times that of foundation establishment's true essence. Who would put in the effort to cultivate a 3rd meridian? Disciple understands. Xiaohua bowed and answered, Understand my ass. He scolded helplessly, If I had learned something, I wouldn't have let my imagination run wild and I wouldn't have walked the crooked path. Master, are you angry again? A voice laughed as he walked in. Who else could it be but Cui Hongli? My ancestor once said that excessive qi harms the liver, which is the greatest enemy of cultivators like us. Although Master is now a cultivator in the late stage of foundation establishment, he can't ignore this. Although we cultivators don't temper our bodies are the proof that we can use to comprehend the great Tao. Cui Hongli said loudly as soon as he entered the room. Master understands. He smiled helplessly and said, With my cultivation and the cultivation of the 10,000 Thunder Valley, this bit of anger won't hurt me. Behind Cui Hongwen was another very gorgeous female cultivator. Unexpectedly, she was also a foundation establishment cultivator. This female cultivator's eyes were large, like a limpid pool. Although she didn't speak, the way she stared at Xiaohua was clearly filled with questions. It turns out that Xiaohua is here. Cui Hongli turned his head and said, I was wondering why Master got angry again? Xiaohua. When Xiaohua heard this, he didn't know if he was relaxed or angry. He glanced at Zhuo Minghui and Wu Hai. The two obviously weren't surprised by this name, so he could only sigh and cupped his hands. Yes, Cui Hongli, how are you? Of course I'm good. Cui Hongli smiled and said, I have now reached foundation establishment. Naturally, I haven't been as good as I am now. Then he waved his hand and said with a smile, Qiming, come and greet Master and Master's wife. So this is Qiming. Zhuo Minghui's eyes were already looking at the female cultivator, waiting for Cui Hongli's introduction. At this time, she quickly stood up and called out in a slightly exaggerated manner. Junior Dui Qiming greets Martial Uncle Wu Hai and Martial Uncle Minghui. Dui Qiming respectfully bowed to Wu Hai and Zhuo Minghui. Forget it, get up. A smile appeared on Wu Hai's face, but Zhuo Minghui was already in front of her and reached out to pull her up. She turned her head and scolded Cui Hongli, Look at you, this old woman kept saying that Qiming should come and meet us, but you always said that she was cultivating. Today, she didn't make any preparations, but you brought her here. Master's wife, we just casually came to see the two of you. What's there to prepare? Cui Hongli said with a face full of smiles. Martial uncles, this junior came to greet you. My master prepared a gift and asked this junior to bring it. Please kindly accept it. Dui Qiming followed Zhuo Minghui to a chair at the side. She didn't hurry to sit down, but clapped her hand and took out a pure white jade bottle from her storage bag and handed it to Zhuo Minghui. Martial Uncle Dui is too polite. Zhuo Minghui smiled and received it. When she opened the jade bottle, she was shocked and said, "This is over 6,000 years old. Siming fruit?" "Yes, Martial Uncle has good eyesight." Dui Chiming's tone was slightly proud. She smiled and said, "My master obtained this 10 years ago when she was traveling. She hasn't used it much, and this junior's cultivation isn't enough. It's just right to give it to the two martial uncles." "Then I thank your master." Zhuo Minghui handed over the jade bottle and said with a helpless smile. Then she looked at Zhuo Minghui. However, Zhuo Minghui's face was slightly embarrassed. Xiaohua's heart moved and was about to go up, but he heard Zhuo Minghui say, "I didn't expect you to come back today. It seems that I didn't prepare enough." "There's no need." Dui Qiming didn't say anything. Cui Hongli waved his hand and said, "When we came, Qiming already said that she wanted to give master and master's wife a surprise. There's no need to mention any gifts. Damn it, since it's like this young master's spirit herbs will be saved." Xiaohua's footsteps stopped. "Hee, why aren't you sending a message to your eldest martial brother? Tell your sister-in-law and the others to hurry over." Zhuo Minghui smiled and said, "It's rare for our myriad Thunder Valley to gather like this. This disciple has already sent it. Eldest martial brother will be here in a moment." Cui Hongli smiled and said, "Hongli does things properly." Zhuo Minghui praised. Dui Qiming looked at Xiaohua with her bright eyes and said with a smile, "This is junior martial brother Xiaohua, right? I heard Hongli mention you a lot." Alas, Xiaohua looked at Dui Qiming and sighed in his heart. He couldn't tell her age just from her appearance. He could only address her based on her cultivation. However, when he saw Dui Qiming's expression and Cui Hongshan's expectant gaze, he stepped forward and bowed. "Junior Xiaohua greets Martial Aunt Dui." Dui Qiming was very shocked, and her expression was a bit exaggerated. She covered her mouth and glanced at Cui Hongshan. Cui Hongshan also looked surprised and puzzled. Then Dui Qiming hurriedly waved her hand and said, "Junior martial brother Xiao, I and Hongshan are friends of the same generation. Your master is also I's martial uncle. Junior martial brother addressing I like this, I can't accept it." Then she turned her head and rebuked Cui Hongshan. "You see, how is junior martial brother Xiao as unbearable as you say? Why aren't you coming over and saying something? Don't blame me. How would I know?" Cui Hongshan's face was full of smiles. He raised his hand and said, "Xiaohua has never called me senior martial brother. I thought that if you followed me back to Myriad Thunder Valley, he wouldn't call you that. Who would have thought that he would actually call you martial uncle?" Cui Hongshan's warm smile was indeed eloquent. Dui Qiming very knowingly smiled back at him. Then Cui Hongshan turned his head and said to Xiaohua, "Xiaohua, Qiming is I's dual cultivation partner. If you call her martial uncle, then wouldn't you also have to call I martial uncle? Who is your dual cultivation partner?" Dui Qiming's face was crimson, and she immediately rebuked. "Did you see?" Xiaohua's face was calm as he said, "Martial uncle Dui didn't admit it." Cui Hongshan's smile was somewhat cold, but it was only for a moment. He said with a smile, "In the end, you're not willing to call me senior martial brother? What do you think?" Xiaohua glanced at him and said without any trace of politeness, "Xiaohua, I have a question. What if I was Cui Hongshan's dual cultivation? How would you call I?" Dui Qiming's face was still red, but she still asked curiously, "Fellow Taoist Dui, there are many names in Xiaoyu continent. Can't you call me whatever you want?" Xiaohua said with a smile. "Fellow Taoist Dui." Dui Qiming clearly didn't expect Xiaohua to answer like this. "Xiaohua," she helplessly scolded, "how can you not know the rules? Why aren't you calling me senior martial sister? Martial uncle Dui. There's no need. Junior doesn't dare to compete with Xiaohua on lightning plains." Dui Qiming said with a smile, "Junior is also afraid of being trapped to death by his countless fireball talismans." Dui Qiming was obviously joking and wanted to ease the atmosphere. However, Dui Qiming, who hated Xiaohua's lack of initiative the most, immediately turned cold after hearing this. Dui Qiming was very sensitive and discovered Dui Qiming's strange expression. She was slightly stunned and didn't understand the reason, so she quickly looked towards Cui Hongshan. Cui Hongshan had told Dui Qiming about Xiao Hua and Yan Xiefeng's battle as a joke, only wanting to make the beauty smile. At this moment, he was also embarrassed. Just as he was about to mediate the situation, footsteps came from outside the cave. It was Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian. Yan Qinglian walked at the front and saw Xiao Hua and Dui Qiming as soon as she entered the cave. She also felt the coldness in the cave. After bowing to Zhuo Minghui, Yan Qinglian walked in front of Dui Qiming and held her hand with a smile. I've always heard Junior Marshal Brother Cui talk about Junior Marshal Sister, but I never had the chance to meet you. I didn't expect Junior Marshal Sister Dui to be so beautiful. It's no wonder that Junior Marshal Brother Cui was able to pick Junior Marshal Sister Dui out when he went to Dui Lei Palace on official business. Senior Marshal Sister Yen, from what you're saying, I was also following Master's orders and coincidentally went out with Junior Marshal Brother Cui? Dui Qiming was a little shy and answered in a low voice. Yan Qinglian also responded in a soft voice, and the two of them casually chatted. Cui Hongshan let out a long sigh of relief. His gaze swept past Xiao Hua, and an indescribable feeling surfaced in his eyes. He asked very strangely, Xiao Hua, why did you come uninvited today? Is there an omen of Foundation establishment? I naturally have my own reasons for coming. As for Foundation establishment or not, it seems to have nothing to do with you, right? Xiao Hua said indifferently. He, Junior Marshal Brother Xiao naturally came because he received Elder Brother's message. Xiang Yang quickly said. Chapter 1840. Your message? Helplessness sneered. Your summoning talisman is still in your storage bag, right? I was the one who told him to come. Disciple forgot. Xiang Yang scratched his head and said honestly, Disciple was thinking of looking for Junior Marshal Brother Xiao these past few days. When I saw him come to 10,000 Thunder Valley, I thought it was me who sent the summoning talisman. But I didn't think it was Master who sent it. Why are you looking for him? Helplessness wanted to get to the bottom of this. What Helplessness didn't expect was that Xiang Yang actually said very naturally, It's like this, Master. Disciple felt that his cultivation had reached a bottleneck, and now it's time for Foundation establishment disciples to go out and gain experience. Qinglian wants to go out and gain experience, so Disciple also wants to accompany her. In the past, I was the only one in 10,000 Thunder Valley, and Master often went to stand guard, so Disciple didn't really go out and gain experience. But now, Junior Marshal Brother Cui has opened a residence in 10,000 Thunder Valley and needs to nourish his true essence. Disciple will ask for leave from Master and go out and gain experience. And not bad. You really haven't gone out for a long time. Also, Helplessness had a rare amiable expression and didn't scold Xiang Yang anymore. But halfway through, he stopped and changed the topic. You go out with Qinglian more often, and you don't have to come back so early. My 10,000 Thunder Valley has Hongshan, so you don't need to worry. Yes, Disciple understands. Xiang Yang bowed. Cui Hongshan also smiled. Eldest Senior Marshal Brother, please go. Master has little brother here to look after him, so nothing will happen. Then I'll have to trouble Junior Marshal Brother Cui. Xiang Yang turned his head and smiled. Also, Eldest Senior Marshal Brother doesn't need to worry too much about teaching Xiao Hua. Master already told little brother that little brother won't lower himself to his level. Cui Hongshan glanced at Xiao Hua and said to Xiang Yang, Damn, an early Foundation establishment cultivator wants to teach this young master? Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Oh, Junior Marshal Brother Cui misunderstood. Seeing this, Xiang Yang hurriedly waved his hand and said, I just wanted to call Xiao Hua over and ask Master a favor. Your Senior Marshal Brother and I will take Xiao Hua out to gain experience. See if you can. Eldest Senior Brother. Xiao Hua's eyes were somewhat moist. Previously, when Xiang Yang said that he was going to take him out to gain experience, he just casually said it. However, he didn't expect that eldest senior brother, who was nearing the end of his lifespan, would actually still be thinking about his Foundation establishment when he went out to gain experience with his sister-in-law. This made Xiao Hua. How could he endure this? Helplessly, he looked at the incomparably loyal eldest disciple in front of him. He was used to scolding him, but the words were stuck in his throat like cotton. He couldn't bear to say a single word. An indescribable numbness rushed into his eyes. Even if he used the secret technique of the late foundation establishment stage, he couldn't stop it. Helplessly, he had no choice but to look around the cave, as if there were many old cobwebs. He rolled his eyes a few times before he sighed and continued to scold. You have good intentions. Why didn't you build your foundation earlier? Even if you're not at foundation establishment, you still don't need to guard Myriad Thunder Valley. Master, there's no need to uncover old memories. It was rare for Xiang Yang to see helplessness and warmth. He hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, to be able to see that my Myriad Thunder Valley now has Junior Marshal Brother Xiao and Junior Marshal Brother Cui, and that Junior Marshal Brother Cui is now a foundation establishment cultivator, disciple has never regretted what he did before. Alas, Xiang Yang, my Myriad Thunder Valley owes you. Zhua Minghui said the words that she couldn't say no matter what. Listen to what Master said. Disciple is a disciple of Myriad Thunder Valley. Doing things for Myriad Thunder Valley is my duty. If Myriad Thunder Valley doesn't exist anymore, it won't be Disciple's Myriad Thunder Valley anymore. How can Disciple still be Master's disciple? Xiang Yang said very naturally, then turned to look at Cui Hongshan. In the future, Junior Marshal Brother Cui's burden will be heavy. Not only will you have to bear the honor of Myriad Thunder Valley, but you will also have to bear the harmony of Myriad Thunder Valley. Cui Hongshan naturally knew what Xiang Yang was talking about, but he just smiled and nodded slightly. In addition, it made you too lose face in front of the other disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect. I've always felt guilty. Today, I'll take this opportunity to apologize to you too for making you class. Xiang Yang didn't say anything else. He walked in front of Cui Hongshan and bowed deeply. Eldest senior marshal brother, what are you doing? Cui Hongshan was stunned and moved. He hurriedly grabbed Xiang Yang's hand. Ever since he entered the Imperial Thunder Sect, he was different from Xiaohua. Xiaohua hid in the eastern mountain range and only wanted to cultivate properly. He, on the other hand, wanted to rely on the methods of an aristocratic family's disciple to blend in with the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples and create his own world. In this way, he would be ridiculed by the other disciples. Xiang Yang's matter and Xiaohua's matter had deeply pierced his heart. Although he was still respectful to Xiang Yang, which was far from the way he treated Xiaohua's side, there was naturally no lack of complaints in his heart. Now, although he had followed his own wishes and made himself the backbone of the Myriad Thunder Valley in the future, when he saw Xiang Yang suddenly deign to bow to him, he was still shocked. How could Cui Hongshan stop Xiang Yang from bowing? When Xiang Yang bowed, Cui Hongshan was still somewhat at a loss and looked helplessly at him. No expression could be seen on helplessness's face, as if he was thinking about something. Junior Marshal Brother Xiao. Xiang Yang walked in front of Xiaohua and prepared to bow. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's hand was still the same as before, as firm as metal and stone. Xiang Yang couldn't bow and couldn't help but frown. Could it be? Junior Marshal Brother wants me to use my full strength? Eldest Senior Marshal Brother, what did you do wrong? On what basis are you apologizing to little brother? Xiaohua's face was heavy like water as he said, little brother has never felt that eldest senior marshal brother has lost little brother's face. Moreover, little brother has always been proud to have an eldest senior marshal brother like you. No matter if it was in the Thunder Palace or the Imperial Thunder Sect, as long as little brother mentioned eldest senior marshal brother's name, I would always respectfully address you, never slacking off in the slightest. If eldest senior marshal brother feels that little brother is wrong, then eldest senior marshal brother can use your full strength to apologize to little brother. Junior marshal brother Xiao, this is a knot in big brother's heart. You don't make things difficult for big brother. As Xiang Yang spoke, sure enough, he stirred up his magic power and very stubbornly bowed in greeting. Eldest senior marshal brother, if you bow like this, then little brother's heart knot will also be born. You also don't make things difficult for little brother. Xiaohua smiled and raised his arm. Ah? At this time, Xiang Yang was incomparably flabbergasted. This time was different from before. He really wanted to bow, and the magic power in his body had already been stirred up to 70%. He was now a middle foundation establishment cultivator. 70% magic power was not something a peak chi condensation disciple could compare to. Even if Xiao Hua's divine power was astonishing, he still absolutely wouldn't be able to resist. Xiang Yang? Helpless, he opened his mouth in a rare occasion. What Xiao Hua said is correct. These past few years, Master has been too harsh on you. The one who should say words of apology should be Master. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it. Chapter 1841. Zhuo Minghui also agreed. Since Xiaohua doesn't want you to bow, you shouldn't make things difficult for him. If you make things difficult for him, you're also making things difficult for us. Don't tell me you also want your master to apologize to you? You see, eldest senior brother. You should get up. Xiaohua smiled and raised his arm, actually helping Xiang Yang up. At the same time, he even winked at Xiang Yang. Xiang Yang was stupefied. He still hadn't removed his magic power and was helped up by Xiaohua just like that. He almost wanted to rub his eyes to see if he was dreaming. There was only one thought in his mind. Junior brother Zhao's strength, how great is it? Husband, master's wife is right. Yan Qinglian brushed her sleeves and said with a forced smile, don't make things difficult for Xiaohua. You're making things difficult for yourself. Xiang Yang came back to his senses. He smiled bitterly and sighed. I have really shamed myriad Thunder Valley. My heart, Xiaohua interrupted, doesn't eldest senior brother still have Xiang Zhili? His name will definitely spread throughout Dawn Rain continent in the future. That's just a reason for me to comfort myself. Xiang Yang's brows relaxed and he shook his head. Moreover, even if his name spreads throughout Dawn Rain continent, it's still Xiang Zhili's name. What does it have to do with his father? Xiang Yang originally liked talking about Xiang Zhili very much, but he was unwilling to talk about it now. Clearly, he was also somewhat disappointed. All right, husband, Xiaohua has been here for a long time. You should also tell him about this matter. Zhuo Minghui saw that Cui Hongshan was somewhat embarrassed and Dui Qimeng was sitting there, not knowing how to interrupt. Helplessness's voice was also amiable as he said, Thunderclap Palace sent an order. Now that the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden's spiritual energy has recovered, many kinds of spiritual herbs are needed. I'm afraid you alone won't be able to do it. You should assign some new disciples to manage. Xiaohua frowned and thought, as expected, the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden is no longer a pure land. However, I've already replied to this matter. You should also return the token to Thunderclap Palace. Helplessness said expressionlessly. But Xiaohua asked curiously, because they will be leaving in 10 days, and you will also be leaving the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden in 10 days. He clapped his hands helplessly, and 2 messaging talismans appeared in his hands. He raised his hand and said, Sun Lei Palace's martial uncle Sun Ming sent a message. Her disciple is going out to experience Foundation establishment, and she specifically asked for you to accompany her. Master can't disobey martial uncle Sun's words. Besides, you've been meditating in the Eastern Ridge for a long time. It's time for you to go out and gain experience. I've already agreed to it. Then he looked at Xiang Yang and said gently, your eldest senior brother is also going out to train. You can go with him. Shui is already about to build her foundation? Xiaohua stared blankly. He hadn't received Shui's message. He didn't expect that Shui would enter Foundation establishment so soon. I'm afraid only Shui who has reached Foundation establishment would allow you to accompany her. How could other people trouble an aura-refining disciple like you? Look at you. You joined the Imperial Thunder sect at the same time as Shui. Back then, Shui was only in the 7th layer of aura refining, but you're in the 10th layer. Now, she unexpectedly wants to build her foundation before you. It's fine if you know the inside story, but if you don't, won't you push this matter onto me? You'll say I didn't teach my disciple well. This time, you have to comprehend more. I'm not asking you to build your foundation this time, but you have to make more preparations for building your foundation in the future. 50 years. Alas, you're still some distance away from 50 years. And disciple understands. Xiaohua was also happy to hear his master's tactful tone. He bowed and said, "Disciple will certainly remember what master said." Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, he helplessly glared at him. "You don't have to say one thing to my face and another behind my back. You only need to remember half of what master said, and you won't be distracted. You could have built your foundation long ago." Then he thought of something and turned to Dui Chimeng. Martial niece Dui must also know that Dao is always the most important thing in cultivation. If you don't have Dao skills, no matter how powerful your magic is, it's useless. Yes, martial uncle is right. Dui Chimeng slightly stood up and said, "Master has also warned I many times that Dao is the foundation and magic is the end. Only when one's Dao skills are solid can magic be effective. If one only pursues the profoundness of magic and the mysteries of magic, then they're neglecting the essentials and chasing after the trifles." Good. Helplessly clapped and said, "Such a simple and easy to understand principle, but some people just don't take it seriously. If they're simply obsessed with magic, then it's not that they're not making progress, but they're still biting off more than they can chew, trying to comprehend other things by analogy and master everything." Xiaohua smiled bitterly in his heart. Wasn't helplessness talking about him? Unfortunately, helplessness said too little. Xiaohua wasn't just biting off more than he could chew, he wasn't just comprehending other things by analogy. No matter if it was the cultivation method of the 18th layer of Qi refining, the phoenix battle body, or the dragonization art, which one of them could helplessness even dream of? Let's not talk about the soul cultivation method, the Buddha's Saraira, or the heavenly Tao space. Master, disciple will go back and reflect on his mistakes. Xiaohua bowed and said, "What do you mean by closing your door and reflecting on your mistakes? You're not happy just because I said a few words to you?" Helplessness was rather moved by Xiang Yang's matter, so he spoke more, and then he berated. Junior martial brother Xiao just found out that he's going to go out and gain experience. Time is tight, so let him go back and pack up, and prepare to hand over to the disciples sent by Thunder's shocking palace. Xiang Yang hurriedly said. Helplessness unhappily glanced at Xiang Yang, and coldly snorted, "I don't know what I've done to have accepted you two as disciples. One is honest and considerate, one is compassionate, one is always considerate of others, and the other doesn't dare to be ruthless. Damn it, if it was me, I would have crushed that guy to death like a chicken. He actually dared to behave atrociously in my 10,000 Thunder Valley." These words were very abrupt. Dui Chimeng was slightly stunned, not knowing what helplessness meant. Xiaohua suddenly understood. Helplessness scolded him so ruthlessly in front of the Temple of Life and Death because he didn't act ruthlessly towards Yan Xiefeng. That's right, Zhenjie bullied myriad Thunder Valley and forced helplessness to swear a blood oath on the spot. This opportunity to go out was wasted by Xiaohua, so how could he not be angry? After entering the Temple of Life and Death, everyone was responsible for their own life and death. Even if he crushed Yan Xiefeng to death, Zhenjie absolutely wouldn't say a single word of complaint. If he didn't let his master be happy, then the unlucky one would naturally be him. AI, Master, 2 people from Thunder Shocking Palace died in this disciple's hands, and this disciple is currently not Zhenjie's opponent. Of course, I don't want to cause more trouble. Xiaohua bitterly smiled in his heart, but he couldn't say it out loud. Forget it, go back and reflect on yourself. Helplessness waved his hand, and said, "I've already sent the message to Thunder Shocking Palace the day before yesterday. I'm afraid that the people coming will go to Eastern Ridge in a few days. After you hand over, go stay in Xiang Yang's cave for the time being." Yes, this disciple understands. Xiaohua bowed and left. Dui Chimeng listened with interest and also watched with interest as Xiaohua calmly left. It was as if Xiaohua's scolding of helplessness was nothing more than a passing wind. Even she could see that although Xiaohua said he understood, he actually didn't take it to heart. How could Dui Chimeng not know? This was also the first time she saw a disciple who didn't know when to advance or retreat. When Xiaohua returned to Eastern Ridge's medicine garden and looked at the medicine garden that he used his puppet to level, Xiaohua's heart was filled with emotion. Although he didn't personally level it, it was still the result of his hard work. Originally, he thought that he could still stay here for a few more years until he reached Foundation establishment before he could leave. Who would have thought that his master's plans couldn't compare to his master's? Helplessly, he was sent away with a single sentence. However, accompanying Xue Xue in her experiential learning would be a sweet journey. It would also be a good way to make up for what he owed her. Moreover, Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian, two experts in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, would accompany her. He only needed to hide behind the two of them, so why not? The spiritual plants in Eastern Ridge's medicine garden were all planted in Xiaohua's space, so he didn't put them away. Instead, he returned to his cave and put away the spirit talisman for the rabbit formation and the formation plate for the heavenly fire formation. Xiaohua simply closed his eyes and cultivated outside his cave. 10 days passed in a flash. Unexpectedly, Xiaohua didn't receive any message from Xue Xue. Just as he was astonished, the disciples of Thunder's shocking palace arrived. This time, there were actually 10 of them. The first was a disciple who joined Thundershocking sect a few years later than Xiaohua. His cultivation was already at the early stage of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. The 9 following behind him had even weaker cultivations, only at the early stage of the 9th layer of the Qi refining realm. The 10 of them respectfully saluted Xiaohua, then took out the Thundershocking Palace's order and handed it over to him. Xiaohua glanced at it, then handed the Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden's order tablet over to them. He smiled and said, "Junior Marshal Brother Lu, I entrust this Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden to you." Junior Marshal Brother Lu's name was Lu Jing. After receiving the order tablet, he put it away properly and said with a smile, "The Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden is sparsely populated, so no one likes to come here. Senior Marshal Brother Xiao, you've been here alone for so many years. We all admire you. If it weren't for the abundant spiritual qi of heaven and earth, to tell you the truth, even if you beat I to death, I wouldn't have come here." Xiaohua was amused by Lu Jing's frankness. He smiled and said, "I naturally like tranquility. This place is the most undisturbed place, so of course I would choose this place. Let's go, I will tell you all about the medicine garden I've opened these past few years." "Thank you for your trouble, Senior Marshal Brother Xiao." The 10 people bowed. When the 10 people saw the medicine garden Xiaohua had opened and leveled, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. The other 9 people looked at each other and didn't say anything. Instead, it was Lu Jing who shook his head and said, "Senior Marshal Brother Xiao, you've really worked hard. With this kind of foundation in the Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden, we don't need to work too hard." "It's nothing." Xiaohua waved his hand, feeling content in his heart. Then, he looked at the others and said in a low voice, "Junior Marshal Brother Lu, I have some questions. Can I ask you in private?" "Of course." Lu Jing nodded. "That's right, I also have some questions to ask Senior Marshal Brother." "Okay." Xiaohua let the 9 people familiarize themselves with the Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden's terrain, then he brought Lu Jing to his abode. "What questions do you have?" Xiaohua asked. Lu Jing looked around and asked in a low voice, "Senior Marshal Brother Xiao, I heard that many disciples have died in this Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden. Moreover, several seniors have also died nearby. Is this true? If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it." Chapter 1842. Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. He glanced at him and asked curiously, "Where did you hear these things from?" This disciple entered the Imperial Thunder sect, so I naturally don't know these secrets. However, among the disciples who came to the Eastern Ridge with me this time, there were indeed a few direct disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect. Their eyes and ears weren't as closed as mine. I don't know where they got the information and told me in private on the way here." Lu Jing smiled apologetically. "However, since Senior Brother Xiao has been here for so many years, these things are obviously just rumors." Xiaohua thought for a moment and smiled. These things might be true. However, I have only opened the formation of the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden in these past few years. I absolutely won't go out unless something happens, so naturally I haven't encountered anything strange. Presumably, you also know that there's a forbidden area of my Imperial Thunder sect near the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden. The so-called senior's death should be related to that forbidden area. As long as we don't go near the forbidden area, there shouldn't be any problems. Like I said, Lu Jing smiled. If something happens, it's definitely something you ask for. However, junior brothers all wanted me to ask senior brother if there's any secret life-saving technique, so I have no choice but to ask. Life-saving secret technique? Xiao Hua was secretly delighted. I killed Yi Yuan, so you guys naturally won't have to worry about your lives. As for the ruthless methods of Foundation establishment seniors, presumably you guys also won't encounter them. I don't have any secret techniques. Well said, we're all fellow disciples. If I can say it, I will naturally say it. Xiao Hua nodded. This is a life-saving matter, so I won't hide it. Then, senior brother, what do you want to ask? Lu Jing also asked. Oh, I just saw on the order that among the 10 disciples who came to the Eastern Ridge, there were actually 4 or 5 disciples surnamed Zhen from the Thunderous Palace. These disciples, don't they usually work in the more comfortable chores of the Thunderous Palace? Why did they come to the Eastern Ridge? I originally thought I saw wrongly, but it seems that's not the case. These are the direct disciples of the Thunderous Palace that I just mentioned. Lu Jing smiled. However, their cultivations haven't improved, so they weren't favored by the Thunderous Palace masters. Naturally, they were sent to the Eastern Ridge. The direct disciples of the Thunderquake Palace are actually unable to make any progress in their cultivation? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. Haven't their aptitudes always been better than the disciples we sent to the Imperial Thunder sect? A faint smile appeared on Lu Jing's face as he said, Senior Brother Zhao's words were true a few years ago. However, there are some changes now. Those direct disciples no longer have good aptitudes. Even those who had good aptitudes before have begun to regress. Why is that? Xiao Hua was even more baffled. He had never heard of a person's aptitude regressing. Who knows? Lu Jing said disdainfully, I won't hide it from you, senior martial brother. These direct disciples have been cultivating for a longer time than I. Even when I entered the Imperial Thunder sect, my cultivation was only slightly higher than theirs. Over the years, I's cultivation has been constantly increasing while they have stagnated. Even they themselves don't know the reason. Oh, so it's like that? Xiao Hua faintly nodded. That's not all. Among the disciples who entered the Imperial Thunder sect, the vast majority of the disciples from cultivation clans such as I improved their cultivation very quickly. Comparatively speaking, only half of the direct disciples are able to keep up. Lu Jing said very proudly, otherwise, the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden wouldn't have let me lead the group. Of course, if Senior Martial Brother Xiao didn't have to go somewhere else, this place would naturally follow Senior Martial Brother Zhao's lead. What about the loose cultivators? What are their cultivations like? Xiao Hua asked very naturally. This disciple isn't too sure. A trace of disdain appeared on the corner of Lu Jing's mouth. This disciple doesn't have a good relationship with any loose cultivators. Furthermore, recently, my Imperial Thunder sect has rarely recruited disciples from loose cultivators. Xiao Hua still wanted to ask a few more questions, but at this moment, the spell formation outside the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden was making a ruckus. Lu Jing noticed it and looked at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Take a look. They might not necessarily be looking for me. Who would have thought that when Lu Jing opened the spell formation of the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden, there would be 2 charming female disciples outside. One of them was actually at the early stage of Foundation establishment. Lu Jing didn't dare to be negligent and promptly saluted. Xiao Hua smiled and said, What are the 2 of you doing here? The 2 people who came were Xue and Sun Shu. I heard that Junior Martial Brother Xiao was going to go out with Junior Martial Sister Xue to gain experience. As your Senior Martial Sister, I naturally came to send you off. Sun Shu said with a smile like a flower. Xiao Hua smiled and looked at Xue again. He said warmly, I'm afraid you already knew? Why didn't you send me a message earlier? Xue Xue was somewhat shy and her face was slightly red. I didn't plan to go out and gain experience. It's just that Master is going into seclusion. She said that she might not be able to come out during the training period, so she simply let me go now. As for Master sending a message to Martial Uncle Helplessness, I just found out. Sun Shu's face was filled with undisguised envy. She nudged Xue Xue with her arm and said with a smile, Junior Martial Sister, you should be content. Last time, in order to bring Junior Martial Brother Xiao out to gain experience, I spent a lot of effort. You, on the other hand, Master already arranged everything. I can't help but envy you. Senior Martial Sister, you're already a foundation establishment cultivator. How can you lower yourself to the same level as me? Xue Xue said with a smile. Lu Jing was surprised when he heard this. He really didn't expect this unremarkable senior martial brother Xiao to have such a good relationship with two female disciples with profound cultivations. It was to the extent that they were both at the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm and had a faint feeling of dual cultivation. Alright, let's go. Xiaohua waved his hand and turned to Lu Jing, saying, Junior martial brother Lu, I'll leave the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden to you. I'll have to trouble you in the future. I don't dare. Disciple will wait for the day senior martial brother Xiao builds his foundation. Lu Jing hurriedly returned the greeting. Don't worry, junior martial brother Xiao, Sun Shu quickly said. Junior martial brother Qian also said that he would send you off. He should be here by now. Junior martial brother Xiao is going out to gain experience. How could I not come? Sun Shu's voice hadn't faded away when Qian Diheng's figure flew over from afar. Thunder evasion. Seeing this, Lu Jing's jaw almost dropped, especially when he saw that Qian Diheng was only an early-stage foundation-building cultivator. Oh my, even senior martial brother Qian came to send me off. Junior martial brother is really honored. Xiaohua smiled and pulled Xue Xue's hand to welcome him. Sun Shu, on the other hand, didn't find it strange at all and flew up as well. Damn it, this senior martial brother Xiao seems to not care about this foundation-building senior at all. Lu Jing's eyes revealed an envious expression. In midair, Qian Diheng clapped his hand and took out a storage pouch. He said with a smile, This is something I prepared for you. Junior martial brother, please accept it. I hope that junior martial brother can return with a full load this time. Xiaohua took it and swept it with his divine sense. He smiled and said, The storage pouch you gave junior martial brother last time already had a lot of foundation-building pills. What are these few pills for? Are you afraid that junior martial brother won't have enough? If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it. Chapter 1843. Don't mention it. Qian Diheng waved his hand. The foundation establishment pill from last time was what junior brother Xiao deserved. Moreover, that thing is easy to sell outside. It's very easy to exchange for magic tools and spirit stones. This time, I asked for these pills from the Earth Thunder Palace's alchemists. The quality is excellent. It's a token of my appreciation. Xiaohua understood, and his heart felt warm. He put away the storage pouch and said with a smile, Then this little brother won't be polite. If there are any good things during the training, this little brother will also remember to give you a share. Qian Diheng's eyes lit up and he laughed. I was waiting for you to say that. Tiske, Xiaohua shook his head in disappointment. Senior brother Qian is really too unscrupulous. Hearing Sun Shu's voice, Xiaohua hurriedly turned his head. Sure enough, Sun Shu was also holding a storage pouch and looking at Xiaohua with a smile. Forget it. I'll take them all. Xiaohua laughed loudly and took them without any trace of politeness. You're all at the early stage of foundation establishment. I'm only at the Qi refinement realm. What do you need? Let's hear it. Qian Diheng glanced at Sun Shu and smiled slyly. Go ahead and take it. We won't dislike it. Xiaohua looked at the two and was speechless for a moment. Xiaohua, let's talk while we walk. Xue Xue thought Xiaohua was embarrassed and changed the topic. Xiaohua held Xue Xue's warm hand and smiled. Don't worry, don't worry. We still have fellow travelers. Who else wants to go out for experiential learning? Shui Shui was obviously disappointed. Its eyes eldest senior brother and senior sister-in-law. Xiaohua smiled. Wait for I to send a messaging talisman. Oh, so that's how it is. Shui Shui suddenly understood. Not long after, Xiang Yang's messaging talisman flew back. It was already on the way to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Let's go. Eldest senior brother is almost there. Xiaohua urged his transcendence energy. Sun Shu and Qian Diheng also flew behind him like how they did in the past, heading straight for the mountain gate. The mountain gate of the Imperial Thunder Sect was still there, but there weren't any disciples on the way down the mountain. Only the people of the myriad Thunder Valley were standing in front of the guest pavilion. When Xiaohua arrived, Helpless and the others seemed to have already warned Xiang Yang. Looking at Xiaohua, Sun Shu, and Qian Diheng, Helpless swallowed the words he wanted to scold back. Only after the four of them came forward to greet him did he glance at Xiaohua and say indifferently, "Follow your eldest senior brother out. If there's anything, just ask more." "Yes, disciple understands." Xiaohua bowed in thanks. "Shui Shui will go out with you to gain experience. Learn from others. Even if you can't build your foundation this time, you have to prepare for the future." Helplessly, he said, "Also, ask your eldest senior brother what's going on with the second foundation establishment. This is also a rare opportunity for you." "Yes, Dizzy understands." Xiaohua replied again. "The things that Master gave you have already been handed over to eldest senior brother. I also have a few medicinal pills here. You can keep them for yourself." Cui Hongshan heard Helpless words and clapped his hands. Very naturally, he took out a bottle of medicinal pills from his storage pouch and handed it over. His intentions were admittedly good, but his actions were rather condescending. Xiaohua didn't even look at it. He shook his head and said, "Many thanks, I have never lacked medicinal pills." Cui Hongshan frowned. Just as he was about to speak, he saw the displeasure on Helpless' face. In his heart, he was delighted and said somewhat pitifully, "You and I are from the same sect. You don't even want to accept I's small token of appreciation? Little brat, what are you doing?" Helpless' expression suddenly changed and he cursed. "Your senior brother Cui has good intentions. How can you treat other people's good intentions as ill intent?" Then he looked at Cui Hongshan and said, "Hongshan, ignore him. This guy is probably worried that he won't be able to build his foundation and will waste medicinal pills for nothing." Seeing the pride on Cui Hongshan's face, Xiaohua became angry. He stared straight into Cui Hongshan's eyes. After a few breaths, the anger on his face disappeared. He stepped forward and bowed, "Many thanks for Senior Cui's good intentions. Junior already has enough medicinal pills and doesn't dare to ask for more. Junior appreciates Senior's good intentions." Xiaohua's address actually had a hint of cutting off all ties. "Little brat." Helpless became even more furious. "Okay, it's already late. They should also leave." Zhuo Minghui hurriedly said, "Moreover, Xiaohua is with Xiang Yang. He can't use any medicinal pills." Helpless coldly snorted and no longer looked at Xiaohua. Cui Hongshan also had an innocent expression. Thus, Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian took Xiaohua and Shui Shui, bowed to everyone and went down the mountain along the mountain path. When the four figures disappeared from the mountain path, Helpless' gaze was still there. It was unknown whether he was looking at Xiang Yang or Xiaohua. Xiang Yang's group of four flew out of the Imperial Thunder Sect for more than half a day. Xiang Yang was the first to stop in midair. He turned to look at Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Junior brother Xiao, where are we going?" Xiaohua was stunned, then understood. He hurriedly turned to Shui Shui and asked, "Shui Shui, where are you going to train?" Shui Shui's eyes moved and said with a smile, "Master left a message. I'll listen to senior brother Xiao wherever we go." "It can't be." Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Xiang Yang and said, "Senior brother, tell me, where are you going?" Everyone got it wrong." Xiang Yang also said with a smile, "Because we heard that we were going to train together with junior sister Shui, we thought that Martial Uncle Sun had already arranged everything. We just had to go together. We didn't have much preparation before. Where did senior brother want to go before? Xiaohua asked. We don't have anywhere to go. We just want to take advantage of the time and walk around Xiaoyu continent. Xiang Yang glanced at Yan Qinglian. Both of their gazes were filled with tenderness. Junior sister has a place to go, but I don't know if I should say it. Shui saw that everyone didn't have any ideas, so she said somewhat shyly. Junior sister Shui, there's no harm in saying it. Yan Qinglian said with a smile. Junior sister read a travelogue in Sun Lei Palace. It talked about the Guihe Sea. From the records, the sea was extremely beautiful, like a paradise on earth. As Shui said this, she actually started reading. Unknowingly, the surroundings were completely engulfed by darkness. Everywhere was pitch black, and the sea seemed even more unfathomable. Everything was silent, and only the waves beat against the beach, letting out a low and rhythmic sound. The playful little waves were no longer as turbulent and surging as they were during the day. They gently caressed the reefs on the shore, letting out a thwa-hwach sound. It was as if they were humming a moving lullaby, lulling people to sleep. The vast sea seemed to be connected with the sky. The torrential waves crashed against the reefs, letting out a thunderous sound. In the azure night sky, a full moon cast its clear radiance onto the ink-blue waves. A long, trembling pillar of light appeared on the surface of the sea. The sea was like a mother who had just woken up, emitting a warm aura. The gentle waves were a morning song she was humming. The seagulls were like her children, flapping their wings to this song and circling around her chest. Great! Xiaohua and Xiang Yang didn't speak. Yan Qinglian now clapped her hands and said with a smile, I've long heard that the sea is the place where all rivers return to their origin. It's just that I've never been there. Junior sister Shui's words are exactly what I was thinking. Xiang Yang helplessly looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua's eyes were also filled with helplessness. After all, Xiaohua didn't hear anything from what Shui said just now. What blue waves, what blue sky, what azure night sky, how could they compare to the profoundness of the heavenly Tao? How could they compare to the enjoyment of cultivation? Unfortunately, since Shui said so, and Yan Qinglian also agreed, the two male cultivators probably didn't have any excuses. It was still Xiang Yang who reacted quickly. He clapped his hands and said with a smile, Madam's words are exactly what I was thinking. I also wanted to see the majesty of the sea for a long time. Great. Xiaohua curled his lips. He didn't think that his usually honest senior brother would be so flattering. Darling Xiao, Shui asked somewhat sweetly, are you going? Great. Xiaohua slapped his forehead and said in surprise, Junior sister Shui really spoke the truth in I's heart. I've long wanted to see the magnificent waves of the sea. If it wasn't for junior sister's reminder, I would have forgotten my many years of wish. Xiang Yang laughed and said, then we'd better hurry up and leave. After flying for another half a day, they saw that the sky was already dark. Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian looked at each other and both of them landed at the foot of a mountain. Xiang Yang said with a smile, it's already late. We don't need to constantly be on the move. Let's rest first before leaving. Very good. Xiaohua looked at Shui and also agreed. But then Xiang Yang said, we husband and wife will find a cave to rest. You two can also find a place to rest. After saying that, the two of them held hands and flew to the east, leaving behind Xiaohua and Shui who looked at each other in dismay. Damn, this senior brother. Xiaohua was actually slightly embarrassed. Shui's face was even redder. But after a moment, Shui said in a mosquito-like voice, Xiaohua, when your senior sister Shui goes out to experience the world, how does she rest? Xiaohua said with a smile, naturally I'm alone. How would I know how the three of them rest? Then, what about Xiaohua and big sister Hongxia? Shui's voice became even softer. Could it be that you want to know? Xiaohua's heart swayed. He held Shui's small hand and said in a low voice. Shui's face was abnormally hot, but then it became somewhat pale. She forced a smile and said, Xiaohua, I haven't built my foundation yet. What you and big sister have done is not something I can accept. I hope Xiao Hua can forgive me. How could Xiao Hua not know? He used his right index finger to tap the back of Xue Xue's jade-like hand and said with a smile, "Your husband also hasn't built his foundation. Wife also has to forgive your husband." But Xue Xue spat lightly. Her heart was indescribably sweet. This experience was really what she was looking forward to. But then, Xue Xue stared blankly and anxiously said, Xiao Hua, you haven't built your foundation. You actually and big sister Hongxia. Speaking to hear, Xue Xue's face became even redder. Chapter 1844. Of course. Xiao Hua was stunned. Obviously, he hadn't thought of it until now. The Imperial Thunder sect only allowed dual cultivation disciples after they built their foundation, or maybe aura refining disciples were no longer able to advance, so they were allowed to find a dual cultivation partner among aura refining disciples. He hadn't built his foundation yet, but he was already dual cultivation with Hongxia Fairy. Would it affect his cultivation? However, when he thought about how vigorous he would be after dual cultivation and how his cultivation would advance rapidly, Xiao Hua denied it again and said with a smile, "I'm afraid it won't affect my cultivation." That's good. Xue Xue's heart finally relaxed after hearing this. She held Xiao Hua's hand, and her palm was unexpectedly a little wet. "I hope Master will take pity on me." Her words were really a pun, causing Xiao Hua's heart to boil with anger again. "Let's go, we'll find a cave to rest in." Xiao Hua blinked his eyes. His words naturally also had a pun, causing Xue Xue's redness that had just subsided to surge out again. "Ha!" Xiao Hua laughed and released his divine sense, but after searching for a long time, he really couldn't find any suitable place in the surroundings. "Forget it, let's do it here." Xiao Hua pointed his finger at the foot of the mountain, next to a small stream. "There's no cave here, right?" Xue Xue was a little hesitant. Although sleeping outside was nothing for peak aura refining disciples, Xue Xue still felt that it wasn't safe. "Watch your husband's methods." Xiao Hua waved his hand, and several puppets appeared out of thin air and rushed towards the place Xiao Hua pointed at. They seemed to be familiar with the place, and in just a moment, a rather flat cave appeared in front of Xue Xue. "This cave, how is it?" Xiao Hua waved his hand and collected the puppets standing in front of him, then said with a smile, Those are puppets?" Xue Xue asked, dumbfounded. "Exactly. Such precious things, you actually used them to make a cave?" Xue Xue couldn't help but ask. Not letting them work, but making your husband work?" Xiao Hua pulled Xue Xue's hand and strolled into the cave. Although Xue Xue had confided in Xiao Hua and Xiao Hua had accepted it, this was the first time they had stayed together so intimately. Her heart was beating wildly with her own footsteps. Xiao Hua seemed to have heard her thoughts. With a clap of his hand, he took out several dozen sparkling talismans and waved them to lay out the array. Xue Xue scanned the array with her divine sense and discovered that her divine sense couldn't penetrate the array. While she sighed with admiration at her sweetheart's brilliant methods, her entire body went soft. Seeing that Xue Xue actually went limp on his arm, Xiao Hua lowered his head and kissed Xue Xue's forehead. He said tenderly, "Xue Xue, don't worry. If I don't get your master's permission, I won't officially dual cultivate with you. I definitely won't make things difficult for you." Xue Xue's heart was filled with love, but at the same time, there was also a trace of disappointment. She kissed Xiao Hua back for a while, then said with her charming eyes, "This concubine knows that Xiao Hua treats this concubine the best." After that, the two of them were intimate for a while, then each occupied a corner of the cave and closed their eyes to cultivate. Not to mention Xiao Hua's calm face, he was neither happy nor sad as he focused on refining the flames in his meridians. Xue Xue's heart was in knots. After thinking about it, she looked at Xiao Hua's body covered in terrifying flames and didn't circulate her cultivation technique for the entire night. When the sky brightened, Xiao Hua opened his eyes and said with a smile, "What were you thinking about last night?" "This husband wanted to remind you, but I was afraid that you'd easily go berserk if you forced yourself to cultivate, so I didn't stop to talk to you." "Nothing." Xue Xue forced a smile. Then, as if she thought of something, she clapped her hands and took out a pink jade slip and handed it to Xiaohua. What's this? Xiaohua took it and immersed his divine sense into it. There was a layer of restriction inside the jade slip. This is this concubine's gift to husband. Husband, please don't forcibly break the restriction at this time. Shui hurriedly stopped Xiaohua and said, this restriction is my Sun Lei Palace's secret technique. It's extremely mysterious. If you forcibly break it, you'll only need to touch it slightly to destroy the thing inside the jade slip. Then, Xiaohua was even more baffled. When the time comes, husband will naturally know. Shui's face was crimson red. This husband knows? Xiaohua embraced Shui and lightly kissed her. Shui responded strongly, as if venting out last night's tossing and turning. That's right, when husband was cultivating, what was the flame around your body? Shui was a little out of breath and asked curiously. Nothing else, it was a type of spirit stone that this husband uses for cultivation. Xiaohua released Shui and said with a smile, however, it's already gone now, and it's also useful for fire attribute constitutions. Oh, so it's like that? Shui suddenly understood. Right at this time, Xiang Yang's message talisman flew from outside the cave. Let's go, eldest senior brother is getting impatient from waiting. Xiaohua smiled and opened the message talisman. It's your fault for dilly-dallying. Shui used her fist to pound Xiaohua's back and rebuked. Me? Xiaohua was abnormally wronged. I didn't do anything. Of course, Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian's gazes didn't think so. They both looked thought-provoking. Xiaohua wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to open his mouth. He kept feeling awkward. After flying for half a day, he finally understood. Xiang Yang originally didn't think much, but he and Shui probably thought too much, right? Sure enough, when he looked at Xiang Yang's gaze again, it was incomparably clear, without any meaning. Shui also seemed to understand, and her previous shyness also gradually disappeared. After flying like this for several days, just as they were about to pass through a teleportation formation, Shui's expression suddenly changed. She pulled Xiaohua and said in a low voice, Husband Xiao, this concubine, suddenly has an idea. I don't know if I should say it. Say it. Xiaohua saw Shui being so serious and knew it was a bit troublesome, so he asked in a low voice. This concubine has already entered the Imperial Thunder sect for more than 10 years, except for the second year when I officially entered the Imperial Thunder sect and met Uncle at Misty Mountain once. I have never contacted Uncle in all these years. This time, this concubine came out to gain experience. I want to go back and see them. Shui said hesitantly. Why not? Xiaohua said with a smile. Where is Misty Mountain? Is it on the way? Although it is not on the way, there is no need to go too far. After all, there is a teleportation formation. Shui's face revealed a happy expression. However, I am a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Rashly returning to the sect, I am afraid it is not appropriate, right? Your master didn't let you return? No, master only let you make the decision. She doesn't care where you go to gain experience. Shui naturally understood Xiaohua's meaning. That's right. Your husband is a loose cultivator and has nothing to do with your Misty Mountain. It's precisely because I want to go to the Misty Mountain to gain experience. What can the elders in the sect say? Xiaohua said proudly. Husband is indeed wise. Shui's face lit up with joy. When Xiaohua told this matter to Xiang Yang muttered to himself, My Imperial Thunder sect has always prohibited disciples from contacting their own family without the sect's permission. Junior Sister Shui's actions are really inappropriate. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian.com to vote for it. Chapter 1845. Yan Qinglian saw the change in Shui's expression and quickly pulled Xiang Yang's sleeve. She smiled and said, This is all Junior Brother Zhao's arrangement. What does it have to do with Shui? Junior Brother Xiao isn't from the Misty Mountain. It doesn't conflict with my Imperial Thunder sect's ban. Xiang Yang scratched his head and said, That's true. Shui didn't contact the Misty Mountain. The sect's ban didn't say that disciples can't pass by their own place. That's great. Xiaohua clapped and said, I also want to see Senior Ling. I wonder if his cultivation has improved. Seeing Xiaohua clapping and praising, Shueshue's previous uneasiness disappeared. After all, Ling Jingyi previously used the pretense of treating Xiaohua well. If Xiaohua was a narrow-minded person, she really wouldn't dare to go to the Misty Mountain in advance. Let's not talk about Shueshue bringing Xiaohua and the others through the transmission array to the Fog Mountain. Let's talk about Xuanyan School's Gold Goose Mountain Range, a place with dense spiritual qi. All kinds of spiritual grasses flourished and several spiritual sparrows flew back and forth in the thicket, appearing rather carefree. It was completely different from the busy Yanling Palace not far away. Suddenly, a beautiful female cultivator appeared where the clouds were moving. It was Fairy Yingzhua, who was at the late stage of nascent soul. Fairy Yingzhua flew over and pressed down on the clouds. Her face was filled with hesitation. Fellow Taoist Yingzhua, since you're already here, why don't you come in and meet me? A strange voice came from behind the spiritual grass, from within the cave that was close to the mountain stream. Hee, I don't know if fellow Dongshan is here. I don't dare to rashly transmit my voice. Fairy Yingzhua's voice was actually very polite. Fellow Taoist Eastern Mountain's voice also rang out. This place was originally your Xuanyan cult's location. Fellow Taoist Yingzhua is the true master. This poor Taoist is merely a guest. Fellow Taoist, you had better hurry in. So many disturbances. Fairy Yingzhua descended from the sky and slowly walked in from outside the medicinal garden where the spiritual grasses were planted. The immortal's cave behind the spirit grass wasn't very large, but it was very exquisite. Fellow Taoist East Mountain, whose face was still covered, wore a green robe and sat on a prayer mat. In front of him was a fist-sized round pot, which floated in the air and tumbled non-stop. Under the round pot, there were a few wisps of light green flames. The flames were licking the round pot. True Samadhi fire? Fairy Yingzhua's gaze was immediately attracted by the light green flame. She said with a smile, in my morning rain continent, the number of Taoists who can have such pure Samadhi true fire as fellow Taoist Dongshan can be counted on one's fingers. The true Samadhi fire is indeed rare in the Dawn Rain continent, but in my 10,000 demon realm, it's nothing. Fellow Taoist Dongshan raised his hand and said, Fellow Taoist Yingzhua, please take a seat. Fellow Taoist has come at the right time. I am currently refining my 10,000 demon realms fine dew liquid. I will be done in another hour. Cheongyu liquid? Isn't that the spirit tea that fellow Taoist mentioned before that can cleanse the heart and spirit? Fairy Yingzhua's face showed joy. It was obviously very unexpected. I didn't expect fellow Taoist to remember what I said casually. Fellow Taoist Dongshan said with a smile, it's a pity that one of the spirit herbs needed in the fine dew liquid doesn't exist in this Dawn Rain continent. I can only use another spirit herb as a substitute. As for the effect, I don't know. Great. Fairy Yingzhua clapped her hands and said. After that, Fairy Yingzhua didn't speak anymore. She just sat beside fellow Taoist East Mountain and watched quietly. Fellow Taoist East Mountain was also extremely leisurely. Those wisps of true Samadhi fire seemed to be sentient. Following fellow Taoist East Mountain's faintly discernible technique, it was like a few fire spirits dancing around the round pot, and the round pot was still tumbling disorderly in midair. However, as she watched, Fairy Yingzhua's face showed a dignified expression. She had already discovered that the round pots rolling in the air actually contained an extremely obscure rule. It was even close to a kind of fluctuation. Fellow Taoist Dongshan raised his eyes slightly. Seeing Fairy Yingzhua's dignified expression, he also showed a trace of surprise. Then, he concentrated on controlling the true Samadhi fire. Okay. Until half an hour later, fellow Taoist Dongshan let out a long breath. With a wave of his hand, the wisps of true Samadhi fire disappeared. As he cast a few spells, the round pot that was originally rolling suddenly spun violently. Quick! When the round pot had spun a large number of times, fellow Taoist Dongshan stretched out a finger and lightly tapped the top of the round pot. Then he chanted a mantra. The round pot immediately stopped moving and didn't move at all. Go! Fellow Taoist Dong Shan clapped his hand, and a cup that was only the size of 2 thumbs flew out from the ground in front of him. That cup flew in front of Fairy Yingzhua and stopped in front of her. As he pointed his finger, a green water column flew out from the round pot and fell into the cup. It was exactly filled to the brim. And as the water column flew out, the entire cave residence was suddenly filled with an extremely faint strange fragrance. This strange fragrance seemed to be there but not really there. The nose couldn't completely smell it, but the heart could completely comprehend this fragrance. Fellow Taoist, please? Fellow Taoist Dong Shan raised his hand and gestured. Then, he took out another cup and poured a cup. Fairy Yingzhua's eyes stared at the seemingly bottomless green waves in front of her. She opened her cherry lips slightly, and the spiritual tea in the cup suddenly turned into a ball of water and entered her mouth. As the fine dew liquid entered her mouth, Fairy Yingzhua's beautiful eyes slightly opened. Then, she immediately closed her eyes. The expression on her face suddenly changed. All kinds of emotions appeared one after another, and in the end, it turned into a tranquil calmness. After the time it took to eat a meal, Fairy Yingzhua let out a long breath and opened her eyes. She sighed and said, "The spiritual tea of the 10,000 demon realm is really worthy of its reputation. After tasting it today, the spiritual tea of the Dawn Rain continent. How can it enter eyes? Ha!" Fellow Taoist Dong Shan clapped his hands and laughed. How difficult is it for Fairy Yingzhua to taste this spiritual tea? The Dawn Rain continent has all kinds of spiritual herbs. I only need to give the refining method to Fellow Taoist. Fairy Yingzhua's face showed joy. Fellow Taoist, are you serious? Hee, of course I'm serious. Fellow Taoist Dong Shan clapped his hands and took out a jade slip. He handed it to Fairy Yingzhua and said, "This contains the refining method of the fine dew liquid. I hope Fellow Taoist will kindly accept it. If so, thank you very much, Fellow Taoist Dong Shan." Fairy Yingzhua accepted it without hesitation. Just as she was about to put it into her storage bag, she heard Fellow Taoist Dong Shan say, "It's a pity that this fine dew liquid can only be refined 2 cups at a time. Any more and the taste will be bad. Moreover, without the special spiritual herbs of the 10,000 demon realm, the effect of promoting cultivation is still a bit lacking. It's okay. To be able to have such good food, I am already satisfied," Fairy Yingzhua said with a smile. After Fairy Yingzhua put away the jade slip, Fellow Taoist Dong Shan smiled and said, "I wonder why Fellow Taoist Yingzhua came today?" "I came today for 2 things," Fairy Yingzhua said with a smile. "It seems that there is good news." Although there was some surprise in Fellow Taoist Dong Shan's tone, his face was calm. "Fellow Taoist's guess is correct," Fairy Yingzhua said with a smile. "The first thing is about Fellow Taoist Dong Shan. The person that Fellow Taoist Dong Shan asked I to inquire about has some clues." "Really?" Fellow Taoist Dong Shan opened his eyes, and a trace of fierceness flashed through his eyes. That fierceness was actually very sharp. Even Fairy Yingzhua looked away slightly and nodded. However, the specific location and whether it is what Fellow Taoist said, I am still not completely sure. "Great!" Fellow Taoist Dong Shan clapped his hands and said, "It's good that there is news. However, this matter must not be reckless. Do not beat the grass to scare the snake. Before I am ready, there must not be any mistakes." Fairy Yingzhua said again, "Moreover, the things that Fellow Taoist asked I to prepare have been prepared for most of them. Only when those extremely rare materials are in my hands, I will have fulfilled my promise to Fellow Taoist." Hee, Fellow Taoist Yingzhua, please rest assured that I will definitely not have a problem with my promise to Fellow Taoist. Fellow Taoist Dong Shan nodded and said, "As long as Fellow Taoist can help I complete that matter, I will definitely help Fellow Taoist step into the spirit severing stage." Hee, of course, I am not worried about Fellow Taoist Dong Shan. I also know that Fellow Taoist Dong Shan has this secret method. Fairy Yingzhua smiled and said, "But from the hunting seedlings plan, I can see Fellow Taoist's foundation. I have never been worried about this." Then, Fellow Taoist Yingzhua, today? Fellow Taoist Dong Shan asked curiously. Hee hee, it's nothing. Fairy Injwa smiled and said, I's cultivation has almost stagnated in the past few years, and the progress is very little. I feel that the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the Gold Goose Ridge seems to be a bit abnormal, so I specially came to ask fellow Taoist Dong Shan if you have also noticed it. Really? Fellow Taoist Dong Shan shook his head and said, the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the Dawn Rain continent is not the same as the heaven and earth spiritual chi in my 10,000 demon realm. I did not completely absorb the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the Dawn Rain continent to cultivate, so I did not notice anything. I have disappointed fellow Taoist. Oh, so it's like this. Fairy Injwa's expression did not change and said, I wonder if fellow Taoist Dong Shan has any secret method? If I's cultivation stops here and cannot advance to the peak nascent soul stage on time, even if I can help fellow Taoist achieve your wish, if you want to advance to the spirit severing stage, I'm afraid it will be extremely difficult. When fellow Taoist Dong Shan heard this, he frowned slightly and closed his eyes to think carefully. After a moment, he opened his eyes and asked, fellow Taoist used the fine dew liquid just now. Did you feel any progress in your cultivation? Yes, of course there are some benefits. Otherwise, I would not ask for the method. Fairy Injwa said without hesitation. I understand. Fellow Taoist Dong Shan's face showed a trace of a smile. I do know a few secret methods, but they seem to have some shortcomings. If the fine dew liquid is beneficial to fellow Taoist, I do have a secret method. Where is the secret method? Fairy Injwa asked with some incredible joy. This fellow Taoist Dong Shan was a little hesitant. What? Does fellow Taoist think that I am asking for too much? Fairy Injwa was a little displeased. Fellow Taoist Dong Shan smiled and said, of course not. The more fellow Taoist wants, the happier I will be. This means that fellow Taoist I will be able to properly handle what fellow Taoist wants. The reason why I am hesitating is because I do not know what kind of changes there are in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, so I do not dare to tell fellow Taoist. From what I see, I should wait for I to clearly examine the abnormalities here before telling fellow Taoist in detail. Chapter 1846. Great! Fairy Injwa clapped her hands and smiled. Then I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Dong Shan. Haha, I don't dare. I only hope that fellow Taoist Injwa will fulfill I's wish as soon as possible according to our agreement. Fellow Taoist Dong Shan smiled apologetically. Subsequently, Fairy Injwa spoke with fellow Taoist Dong Shan for a while, then took her leave. Fellow Taoist Dong Shan sent Fairy Injwa out. Looking at Fairy Injwa's departing figure, his eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. Immediately, he returned to his cave residence, but came out a moment later, still covering his face. His whole body flew into the air and disappeared without a trace. Far away in the southeastern corner of the country of Shi, there was a mountain range that looked rather majestic. There was a place where a thick fog lingered. The color of the fog was different from that of the Yellow Flower Ridge's array formation. It was very dense and natural. However, it was also different from the fog of the Yulian Mountains. It was in the form of threads and was far less viscous than the fog of the Yulian Mountains. This was the misty mountain where Xue Xue lived since childhood. Since it was known as bewildering fog, there was naturally something fishy about this mountain. The two mountain ranges enveloped by bewildering fog were precisely 9 coils and 18 bends. Mountain paths crisscrossed, and mountain caves were densely packed. Ordinary people could only enter once, and it would be difficult to find a way out. This kind of dangerous place was naturally an extremely dangerous place in the eyes of secular people, but in the eyes of cultivators, it was an exceptionally good place to stay. Thus, at some unknown time, there were almighty cultivators who used divine abilities to set up a formation near Bewildering Fog Mountain. Combining the natural Bewildering Fog Mountain with the unpredictable formation, it formed an impregnable defense, and Bewildering Fog Mountain became famous in the Dawn Rain continent because of this. Of course, the inheritance of the Misty Mountains Ling family to this day was still considered to have some reputation among all the families in the cultivation world. However, their cultivation methods had declined, and their talents had withered. They were already at the bottom of the middle class. In this kind of situation, as the head of the family, Ling Jingyi had the will but was powerless. At this moment he was standing at a high place, gazing at the snow-like and cloud-like fog between the mountains. His brows were knitted together. Next to him was a white-clothed cultivator with a dark complexion, thick eyebrows and large eyes. There was a trace of simplicity between his eyebrows. Although his appearance was quite similar to Ling Jingyi's, his expression was completely different. This person was Ling Jingyi's only son, Ling Feiyun. After a while, Ling Jingyi looked away from the mountain mist and turned to Ling Feiyun. His eyes were full of kindness. "Yes, father." Ling Feiyun also seemed to be in a daze. So, he quickly replied. "Hee, what are you thinking about? You're already at the 10th layer of the qi refining realm, so you're considered one of the best in the Ling clan." Ling Jingyi said with a smile. "I miss big sister." Ling Feiyun didn't try to hide anything. She always said that I'm stupid and that I can't go beyond the 9th level of qi refining. I wonder how surprised she will be when she finds out that I've reached the 10th level. "You child." Ling Jingyi smiled and said, "Shue saw that you were slacking off, so she specially reminded you to be on alert. You are really stupid." Boy didn't know when he was young, so he was quite angry. Ling Feiyun patted his forehead in embarrassment. It wasn't until Big Sister went to the Imperial Thunder School that the boy gradually understood, everyone has to grow up. Even though father reminded you that day, you didn't seem to take it to heart. You only had the energy to compete with your sister? Yes. So many years have passed, Big Sister was already at the 9th level of qi refining. Is she at the 11th level? Is she doing well in the Imperial Thunder School? You don't need to worry about that. The Imperial Thunder School is not something my Misty Mountain can compare to. The 11th level is at the very least. Even the 12th level is within reach. Ling Jingyi said with a smile. Really? Ling Feiyun's face was full of joy as he asked. It's a pity that I haven't heard from Big Sister for so many years. I wonder how her cultivation is now. That boy. Can we also send him to the Imperial Thunder School? If he can enter the Imperial Thunder School, wouldn't that boy be able to be with Big Sister? Hearing this, Ling Jingyi's face frowned again. Is there something wrong with what the boy said? Ling Feiyun quickly asked. Ling Jingyi said with a smile, what can be wrong? The children of my cultivation family entering a cultivation school is the most honorable path. It's also the path to heaven. There's nothing wrong with it. However, Father called you here today because there's something I want to discuss with you. Father, please speak. Ling Feiyun respectfully asked. Well, first of all, it was not easy for your sister to enter the Imperial Thunder School. Although Father had made some preparations, in the end, it was still your sister's own luck. Not to mention having someone to help her enter the Imperial Thunder School. In the end, she was able to become the disciple of a golden core cultivator all because of her physique. I'm afraid you can't learn these two things. Someone to help her? Wasn't that Father's preparation? Father did want to prepare, but I can't directly reach the place where the Imperial Thunder School is recruiting disciples. Your sister was lucky and happened to meet a cultivator she was familiar with. She didn't say the specific situation, only that she relied on that person's help. Who is this person? Since sister is familiar with him, the boy must also know him. Ling Jingyi's face showed a trace of estrangement, shook his head and said, You don't need to ask about this person's name. You definitely don't know him. Oh, so it's like this. Ling Feiyun was very obedient and didn't ask, then asked, What about physique? Sister and the boy both have the blood of the Ling family. Is there a big difference in physique? Ling Jingyi regretted saying this, but seeing Ling Feiyun's confusion, he waved his hand and said, Your sister has the hidden thunder physique. It's exactly the same physique as the golden core cultivator of the Imperial Thunder School. That's why she was favored by that senior. Strange, the boy has the fire physique. I always thought sister had the same physique. How did she become the hidden thunder physique? Ling Feiyun asked. How would father know about this matter? It was the golden core cultivator who confirmed it. Ling Jingyi rolled his eyes and pushed the matter away. Then the boy has the fire physique. He should be able to enter the Imperial Thunder School. Ling Feiyun said again. Unfortunately, although the Imperial Thunder School mainly recruits disciples with the fire and thunder physiques, the thunder physique is the first choice. You might not be able to enter if you go. Ling Jingyi shook his head and said, moreover, how can all the disciples of our cultivation family enter the same school? Unless your sister cultivates to the Golden Core realm, our Misty Mountain will have some shade. Well, the boy knows. Ling Feiyun smiled and said, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. That's right. Ling Jingyi clapped his hands and said, but his tone changed again. Father originally wanted to arrange for you to participate in the selection of the Shanghua sect next year, but now I'm a little hesitant. But, Father, do you have any concerns? Ling Feiyun asked with some confusion. Chapter 1847. Ling Jingyi thought for a moment and said, I didn't want to tell you this because I was afraid you would feel burdened. But, you're the eldest son of the Ling family and it's time for you to make a choice. It's better to tell you. Father, please tell me. I got some information from Father that there are some special changes in the cultivation families on the Xiaoyu continent. Ling Jingyi chose his words carefully and said, many of the big families have had their bloodline awakened, and even more of the bloodline awakened after joining the cultivation sects. The most famous one is Yun Jichong from the Yun family of Su Yan. He's already an early foundation establishment cultivator and his fire dragon bloodline has awakened. Father, what do you mean? Ling Feiyun was stunned and his face was a little strange. This kind of thing can naturally be spread in the cultivation families. Didn't Yun Jichong enter the Huanhua sect? How could the Huanhua sect let this kind of thing spread? Do you think the Huanhua sect cares? The Huanhua sect even sent Yun Jichong back to the Yun family of Su Yan to find the inheritance of the Su family. They want to see if they can cultivate Yun Jichong into a nascent soul master and reproduce the power of the ancient true spirit bloodline. Yes, boy understands. Yun Jichong's life spirit tablet is in the Huanhua sect. The sect has many ways to control him. Ling Feiyun nodded. Yes, and the Huanhua sect probably wanted to hide it from the beginning. However, there are too many awakened true spirit bloodlines on the Xiaoyu continent. The fire dragon bloodline of the Yun family is too conspicuous. They couldn't hide it even if they wanted to, so they just made it public. North Qingyang, South Su Yan. Since the fire dragon bloodline of the Su family has awakened, what about the Kai family of Qingyang? Ling Feiyun frowned. I'm not sure. There's no news about the Kai family of Qingyang. Ling Jingyi was very satisfied with Ling Feiyun's understanding of the cultivation families. He patiently said, however, the most famous Hongxia fairy of the Kai family also entered the Huanhua sect. I'm afraid her bloodline won't be easy to awaken. After all, she's from a side branch and her bloodline is a lot thinner. Boy, I understand Father's concern. Ling Feiyun nodded and said, it's just that none of my Misty Mountain's bloodline has been awakened yet. Boy, is it certain that his bloodline will be awakened? If the boy's bloodline doesn't awaken, then wouldn't that delay his cultivation? This is also why I'm hesitating. Ling Jingyi nodded and said, if you awaken your bloodline after joining the Shanghua sect, it will only be a gift to the Shanghua sect. My Misty Mountain will not be brightened by you. But if you don't enter the Shanghua sect, it will be difficult for you to enter the foundation establishment realm, and the chances of your bloodline awakening will be smaller. What's so difficult about that? Big Sister must have already reached the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. We'll know soon after she builds her foundation, right? It won't be too late for the boy to make a decision after her bloodline is awakened. Ling Feiyun said with a smile. When Ling Jingyi heard this, a bitter expression appeared on his face as he thought to himself, if it was that easy, would Father still be troubled? However, he forced a smile on his face and said, that's right, it's good to wait a little longer. Although Ling Feiyun was simple and honest, he wasn't stupid. He was sharp enough to see his father's troubled expression. Just as he was about to ask, a red message talisman flew out from the fog and stopped in front of Ling Jingyi. Ling Jingyi crushed the message talisman, and Pu Jinyuan's voice came from it. Brother Ling, I'm Pu Jinyuan from the Flying Phoenix sect. Today, I've specially brought Brother Qian Yuming from the Spirit Husbandry sect and Brother Zhan Yuzhan from the Yellow Flower sect to visit. Please open the formation. Qian Yuming from the Spirit Husbandry sect? Zhan Yuzhan from the Yellow Flower sect? Ling Jingyi was stunned, and he couldn't help but frown again. He asked curiously, when did Pu Jianyuan get to know the cultivators from these two sects? Father, the Flying Phoenix sect was close to our Misty Mountain for a period of time more than 10 years ago. However, there was no news from them after that. Senior Pu also hasn't come for a long time. Today, he suddenly brought two seniors to visit. I'm afraid he has ulterior motives. Ling Feiyun said worriedly. Yes, the ancestral magic artifact of the Flying Phoenix sect is very similar to the ancestral magic artifact of our Misty Mountain. Furthermore, they complement each other. The legacies of our two sects are naturally related. Back then, Pu Jianyuan also got close to our Misty Mountain because of this. However, the legacies of our two sects have been passed down for too long, and many details have been lost. In the end, we could only leave it as it is. Pu Jianyuan's visit today definitely doesn't come with good intentions. However, the problem is that I can meet Pu Jianyuan, but how can I not meet the cultivators from the Yellow Flower sect of the Spirit Husbandry sect? Ling Jingyi had schemed against Pu Jianyuan back then, so he naturally had a guilty conscience. Although he couldn't be sure whether Pu Jianyuan was here today for the magic artifact, since there were two Foundation establishment cultivators here, representing two sects, Ling Jingyi couldn't not welcome them. Tell the disciple to open the formation. Ling Jingyi waved his hand and instructed solemnly. Father, Ling Feiyun said anxiously, since you know that they don't come with good intentions, why did you still let them in? Child, there are many things that you can't just not do if you don't want to. There are some things that you have to do even if you know that they can't be done. Ling Jingyi smiled kindly and said, furthermore, since they have entered our Ling family's formation, it's much better than being outside of the formation. Yes, the boy understands. Ling Feiyun's face turned cold. He nodded his head fiercely and clenched his fist. Furthermore, we don't know what Pu Jianyuan is up to. It might not be anything bad. After Ling Jingyi finished instructing, his figure flew into the thick fog between the mountains. Ling Feiyun slapped his storage bag and took out a flying talisman. He used his Fa Li to fly in another direction. Ling Jingyi's figure landed on a towering mountain rock that was filled with thick fog. He first closed his eyes and waited for a moment. When the fog in front of him seemed to have dissipated, he slapped his hand and took out a simple-looking jade pendant from his storage bag. Under the influence of Fa Li, the jade pendant emitted a misty red light. When the light was the size of a flame, Ling Jingyi pointed his finger and the flame turned into the shape of a small swallow and rushed into the fog in front of him. The red light rushed out of the fog and created a 10-feet wide passage. Ling Jingyi put away the jade pendant and slowly moved forward. Before he reached the center of the passage, he heard Pu Jianyuan's laughter in front of him. Fellow Ling, long time no see. How are you? Ling Jingyi smiled and cupped his hands. I have always been good. I didn't expect fellow Pu to bring two fellow Taoists here today. Please forgive me for not welcoming you. It's okay. We were passing by the fog mountain and suddenly thought of something. That's why we took the liberty to visit. Pu Jianyuan smiled and pointed his finger. Come, let me introduce you two fellow Taoists. The person in front was about 50 years old. He was short and had the head of a deer and the eyes of a rat. Although he was wearing a new Taoist robe, his pale yellow eyes made him look like a thief in the marketplace. This is fellow Taoist Zhan Yuzhan of the Yellow Flower sect. Zhan Yu? When Ling Jingyi saw that person's appearance and heard that person's name, he was rather surprised. He couldn't help but smile in his heart. Knowing that something was amiss, he hurriedly tried to cover it up. However, Zhan Yu was still able to sense it. He glanced at Ling Jingyi and sneered, What? Fellow Taoist Ling, you don't welcome I? Of course not. Ling Jingyi knew that he was being rude. He quickly cupped his hands and said, I've heard of Huang Hua sect's name for a long time. I've never had the chance to meet an expert from your sect. Now that I've met fellow Taoist Yan, I'm very happy. How can I not welcome you? Zhan Yu waved his sleeves and ignored him. This is bad. Just as Yunmer expected, they don't come with good intentions. Ling Jingyi thought to himself. Pu Jianyuan didn't give him time to think. He pointed at another unusually fat cultivator who was as thick as a water bucket and said, "This is fellow Taoist Qian Yuming from Spirit Husbandry Sect." Spirit Husbandry Sect is a sect that I's reputation has been known for a long time. I've also visited your sect before. Unfortunately, I only stayed for half a day in the guest hall. After visiting fellow Taoist Jian Mingqing, I came back. I didn't really meet the other disciples of your sect. Ling Jingyi smiled and said, "Now that fellow Taoist Jian is here, I's wish has been fulfilled." "Ha, fellow Taoist Ling has actually met senior brother Jian?" Qian Yuming opened his eyes that were almost narrowed into slits and asked in surprise, "Then, when did this happen?" "Hee, I'm afraid it's been decades." Ling Jingyi's face was a little awkward as he replied, "That's because I hadn't built my foundation yet." "I was in the midst of building my foundation." "Oh, no wonder." Qian Yuming had a look of realization. Senior brother Jian had already fallen 40 years ago. Fellow Taoist Jian's cultivation is very high. He was already in the early stage of foundation establishment back then. How could he have fallen? Ling Jingyi was obviously a little surprised. Qian Yuming didn't explain further and smiled, "This is a small matter of my sect. I'm afraid it's not convenient for I to talk about it." "Fellow Taoist Ling? Are you going to meet your guests here?" Pu Jianyuan asked softly. "Look at I actually forgot the basic etiquette when meeting all of you. Please." Ling Jingyi slapped his forehead and mocked himself. Then, he led the way and flew towards the mountain rocks outside the thin fog. "Fellow Taoists, please." Pu Jianyuan turned around and exchanged glances with the two of them. After turning around a small hill, they were greeted by a flight of stairs that went from top to bottom. There were at least 1,000 steps and it looked quite spectacular. Above the stairs was an archway with the words, "Cloud Mist," written on it. The four of them were all foundation establishment cultivators, so they naturally didn't need to walk up the stairs. Before the four of them reached the archway, Zhang Yuxian pointed at the two words on the archway and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Ling, I think this should be Misty Mountain. At the very least, it should be the word Cloud Mist. What does this nondescript word mean?" "All right, I'll let fellow Taoist John know." Ling Jingyi cupped his hands towards the archway and said seriously, "This was left behind by my ancestors. As for why it's called Cloud Mist and not Misty Mountain, I don't know either. I only know that when I was young, I also asked my father about it. I even told my father to change the name of Misty Mountain to Cloud Mist Mountain. However, my father was the same as I right now. He only smiled bitterly and didn't give me any answer. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Chapter 1848. That's strange. Qian Yuming echoed. Since that's the case, this archway doesn't belong to your Ling clan. Why are you still putting it here? Hee. Qian Yuming's words were harsh, but Ling Jingyi wasn't angry. He glanced at Pu Jianyuan and said with a smile, "I remember that Flying Phoenix Ridge also has an archway with the words Yun Ming written on it. It has nothing to do with Flying Phoenix Ridge. I wonder if fellow Taoist Pu has the same plan?" Pu Jianyuan's expression changed. He said coldly, "This is a family matter of my Flying Phoenix Ridge. Don't you think fellow Taoist Ling is asking too much?" Yes, I have indeed asked too much." Ling Jingyi spread his hands and said, "Fellow Taoists, please." Pu Jianyuan and the other two followed Ling Jingyi into the archway. After passing through several floors of pavilions and seeing many Ling clan disciples, they finally arrived at a rather large hall. The hall's style was simple and the scale wasn't small. It didn't look like the work of a cultivation family. Before they entered the hall, Zhan Yu sighed again. "Fellow Taoist Ling, it's not that I want to talk too much. Although your Misty Mountains hall isn't big, it's majestic and imposing. It doesn't lose to my Yellow Flower Sex hall. It's really beyond I's expectations." Qian Yuming also nodded. "I feel the same way as fellow Taoist John. I have also visited many families, but I've never seen such a magnificent hall. Fellow Taoists, please." Ling Jingyi smiled bitterly. This hall is also the same as the archway. I only know that it was passed down by my Ling clan's ancestors. There are countless mysteries inside, but there aren't any records of its origin. Countless mysteries? Qian Yuming was slightly stunned. He raised his eyes and looked at Pu Jianyuan. Pu Jianyuan immediately smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, please take a seat. Flying Phoenix Ridge seems to have some connections with Misty Mountain. Flying Phoenix Ridge also has such a majestic hall. He, as the host, please." Zhan Yu smiled and gestured with his hand. Ling Jingyi smiled and walked into the hall. Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming didn't follow. Instead, they looked over at Pu Jianyuan. Pu Jianyuan nodded slightly and then walked into the hall. Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming were still a bit hesitant, but after exchanging a glance, they also walked in. The interior of the palace was as splendid as it appeared from the outside. The ceiling and walls of the palace were painted with some strange scenes. There were dragons baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, and there were also giants holding up the heavens and earth. Even in the shady forest, there were finger-like branches extending towards groups of cultivators, and blood splattered all over the ground. Strange, this seems to be an ancient legend, right? Qian Yuming glanced at it and said in surprise, "This thing seems to only be sealed in a very small number of cultivation sects technique imparting pavilions. Moreover, it's a secret technique of the sections. I didn't expect to see it in the Misty Mountain. It's really beyond my expectation." Zhan Yu scanned it with his divine sense and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Ling's palace doesn't only have murals, right?" Ling Jingyi waved his hand and said, "Fellow Taoists, please take a seat. Whether or not there's anything else in the palace is another matter. Who knows if you'll have the chance to see it." After the four of them were seated, the disciples of the Misty Mountain served the spirit tea and spirit fruits and quietly left. "Please," Ling Jingyi said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Pu has been here many times, so you should know that my Misty Mountain doesn't have any special spirit fruits. These are all commonly seen in the country of Xi. I hope the three of you won't dislike them." Hee, Pu Jianyuan and the others laughed. They each picked up a few spirit fruits and tasted them. After the four of them casually talked about the strange stories of the Dawn Rain continent, Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming gave Pu Jianyuan a few looks. How could Ling Jingyi not understand? He picked up a spirit fruit and twirled it between his thumb and index finger. He looked at Pu Jianyuan and said with a smile, "There's a good saying in the secular world. One doesn't visit a temple without a cause. Fellow Taoist Pu hasn't been to my Misty Mountain for many years. I wonder what brings you here today?" Pu Jianyuan put down the spirit tea in his hand and said with a smile, "Since fellow Taoist Ling has asked, then I will get straight to the point." But at this moment, Ling Jingyi seemed to have thought of something and said, "Oh right, before fellow Taoist Pu explains, I want to ask a question first." Pu Jianyuan was stunned and nodded. "Please ask, fellow Taoist Ling." "Oh, it's like this. I heard that in the past few years, many disciples of the cultivation families have awakened their true spirit bloodline. I wonder how the situation is in the Flying Phoenix Ridge?" Why did fellow Taoist Ling suddenly ask about this? What about the disciples of the Misty Mountain? Pu Jianyuan asked back. Hee, after all, my Misty Mountain and the Flying Phoenix Ridge have some connections. Maybe they have the same true spirit bloodline in their bodies. That's why I asked. Ling Jingyi said in all seriousness, and I won't hide it from fellow Taoist Pu. Until now, my Misty Mountain hasn't had a single disciple awakened their bloodline. This? Hearing Ling Jingyi's words, how could Pu Jianyuan not understand the meaning of "Why are we in such a hurry to fight each other?" But he only hesitated for a moment, then clenched his teeth and shook his head. "Your Misty Mountain is Misty Mountain, my Flying Phoenix Ridge is Flying Phoenix Ridge. What does it have to do with your Misty Mountain whether or not my disciples have awakened their bloodline?" "Forget it, fellow Taoist Ling, I have something to say. I came here this time for Ai's family heirloom magic weapon. Previously, I was alone and couldn't fight against you. Now, I have invited fellow Taoist Qian and fellow Taoist Zhan to be Ai's witnesses. Fellow Taoist Pu, are you talking about the magic weapon that was lost in the Flame Forest Swamp?" Ling Jingyi pretended to be surprised. That day, wasn't I with you? How could I see it? And of course, didn't I also make a hard oath? That magic weapon isn't in the hands of I or any of my Misty Mountain disciples. Ha. Pu Jianyuan stood up and pointed at Ling Jingyi, laughing loudly. Ling Jingyi, you really live up to your name. You're sanctimonious, but your mouth is honey and your belly is a sword. You're not someone I can compare to. Then he turned to Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming. Of course, I believed this guy's heart oath and thought that the magic weapon wasn't in his hands. But, in the Flame Forest Swamp, there were no other cultivators apart from I and fellow Taoist Ling. I also couldn't find the magic weapon no matter how hard I tried. Even if I used a secret technique, there was still no news. Fellow Taoists, tell me, apart from this guy, who else could it be? To be fair, fellow Taoist Ling is indeed the most suspicious. Zhan Yu nodded. However, since fellow Taoist Ling has already made a heart oath, I'm afraid it's not very likely. What damned heart oath? I only came to my senses a few years ago. This guy's heart oath only said that he didn't take it, and that his Misty Mountain disciples didn't take it, but he didn't say that he didn't see it, nor did he say that he didn't let other cultivators take it. Chapter 1849. That's right. Qian Yuming clapped his hands and said, if fellow Taoist Ling didn't do anything, you can make a heart oath. If it really has nothing to do with that magic tool, we'll leave immediately. Ling Jingyi laughed. Fellow Taoist Pu, it's been so many years, why are you still thinking about that magic tool? Furthermore, I've already done what I should have done back then. Later on, I saw that our two clans might have some connections, so I did my best to help you find the magic tool. But I didn't expect that after so many years, you would actually accuse me and want to take advantage of my Misty Mountain. Such a dirty idea. I feel disgusted just thinking about it. You came to my Misty Mountain for no reason and forced I to make a heart oath in my Misty Mountain's palace. Isn't this the same as tearing I's and Misty Mountain's face off and stepping on it with your feet? How can I make such a hard oath? Look, fellow Taoists, what I said earlier wasn't wrong, right? I haven't even said anything yet and this guy's face changed. As expected, he has a guilty conscience. Pu Jianyuan cupped his hands and said, fellow Taoists are the famous righteous people in my country of Shi. You should make the decision for I. Fellow Taoist Pu, don't be impatient. Zhan Yu's small eyes narrowed, almost invisible. He waved his hand and said, since I came with fellow Taoist Qian, naturally I want to give the two of you justice. Moreover, since our two families have a relationship, I think it's best if we don't fight. Ling Jingyi's face turned cold. Does fellow Taoist Zhan have any ideas? I just want to find my magic tool. Pu Jianyuan smiled apologetically. Ideas? Zhan Yu shook his head and said, of course there are ideas. It's nothing more than soul-searching or torture. Of course, these are not applicable to fellow Taoist Ling. I think it's better to make peace. If fellow Taoist Ling makes a blood oath, we can shake hands and make peace. What do you say? Fellow Taoist Ling? Fellow Taoist Zhan, don't you think you're going too far? Ling Jingyi knew that today's matter wouldn't end well. No matter how much Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming said, it was all to force him to swear a heart oath. Not to mention that this heart oath was originally aimed at his actions. Even if he didn't do anything, he absolutely couldn't swear a heart oath here. Zhan Yu wasn't surprised by Ling Jingyi's attitude and sneered. Fellow Taoist Ling, are you not giving face to me and fellow Taoist Qian? If I give face to the two fellow cultivators, I will lose my own face. Faced with two kinds of faces, I'd better choose my own. Ling Jingyi clapped his hands and took out the ancient jade pendant. He laughed coldly and said, my Misty Mountain has never had any grudges with Huang Huamin and Spirit Husbandry sect. Furthermore, I don't want to form any grudges with the two of you. I appreciate your kind intentions of coming here to mediate. If the two of you have nothing else to say, I will see you out. Pu Jianyuan slammed his palm on the jade chair and jumped up. He scolded angrily, didn't I say it before? This fellow is just a sanctimonious person. Why should I give him face for no reason? The three of us Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators came and he didn't care at all. Why would he put us in his eyes? Qian Yuming's fat body coupled with the sinister look on his face made him look evil. Ha, you've revealed your true intentions. Ling Jingyi cast the spell that he had already prepared onto the old jade pendant in his hand. The jade pendant immediately gave off a faint white halo and quickly disappeared into Ling Jingyi's palm. Go! Ling Jingyi swung his hand and the halo expanded rapidly, rushing towards the roof of the palace above his head. This fellow actually made the first move. Ha, even if fellow Taoists know about this, I was forced to do it. Zhan Yu laughed, but there was still some panic in his eyes. He clapped his hand and a strange magic tool with a flat front and a round back appeared in his hand. This magic tool was the yellow flower sex congealed turtle. Under the influence of Zhan Yu's magic power, the magic tool congealed turtle gradually emitted an earthy yellow brilliance. Similar to Zhan Yu's reaction, Qian Yuming also took out his magic tool Desert Pearl. It was a slightly yellowish round bead. Under the influence of his magic power, it also flickered with an earthy yellow brilliance. On the contrary, Pu Jianyuan only stood there thoughtfully, calmly watching Ling Jingyi cast a spell to activate the palace's restriction. The ring of light on the jade pendant rushed to the top of the palace and immediately sank into it. Immediately after, wisps of white mist gradually surged out from the surroundings of the palace and gradually destroyed the murals around the palace. The scenes in the murals also became more and more ethereal. Fellow Taoist Pu. Seeing this, Zhan Yu reminded, why haven't you made a move yet? We're deep in the trap. It's better to kill Ling Jingyi as soon as possible. Ha! Pu Jianyuan laughed and pointed at Ling Jingyi, saying, since I dared to bring two fellow Taoists into this palace, I naturally have a way to guard against it. Take a look at Ai's methods. As he said that, Pu Jianyuan clapped his hands and an ancient-looking jade pendant appeared in his hand. To the naked eye, it was actually exactly the same as the jade pendant in Ling Jingyi's hand. Seeing this, Ling Jingyi could not help but cry out in surprise. His eyes flashed with shock, then a look of understanding appeared on his face. The magic power in his body surged and another halo was emitted from the jade pendant. Sure enough, as the halo entered, the mist around the palace surged out even more. In the blink of an eye, all the walls were covered. Everyone was almost completely covered in a cloud of mist. That's all there is to it. Pu Jianyuan smiled and also urged his spiritual power. The same halo emitted from the jade pendant in his hand and instantly hit the top of the palace. Moreover, as the halo sank into the palace, the fog around the palace gradually shrank, just as fast as Ling Jingyi's earlier release. Damn that Ling Chongya! Ling Jingyi saw this and could not help but gnash his teeth. Ling Jingyi, this has nothing to do with Ling Chongya. Pu Jianyuan's face showed a relaxed expression as he sneered, my Flying Phoenix Ridge also has a palace, but it is much smaller than your Misty Mountain. It has already been used as an ancestral hall and unauthorized people are prohibited from entering. The method to control this jade pendant is something that I already knew when I took over the sect. Hearing this, Ling Jingyi's face turned ashen and he sneered, I finally understand your sinister intentions. So, what you were thinking about was not some magic tool. Even if I had just made a blood oath, you would definitely not leave so easily. What you were after was the foundation of my Misty Mountain. To think that I was trying so hard to persuade you earlier. Ling Jingyi, just as you said, Misty Mountain and Flying Phoenix Ridge have countless unexplainable origins. Not only are the true spirit bloodlines similar, even the restrictive spells in various key areas are similar. Our two sects combined into one, isn't that the righteous path of light? Isn't strength increasing? Since you've never thought about it, then let I do it. Pu Jianyuan laughed loudly. Hee, Pu Jianyuan, do you think I haven't thought about this? If it were so simple, wouldn't I have already killed my way into your Flying Phoenix Ridge when you didn't have a magic tool passed down from your ancestors? Ling Jingyi's face had a mocking smile as he said disdainfully, Ling Jingyi, at this point, I'm afraid that this kind of illusionary technique is already ineffective, right? Pu Jianyuan obviously did not take these words to heart. He activated the magic power in his hand again and several rings of light shot out, quickly dispersing the mist in the palace. Ling Jingyi smiled bitterly. He didn't have any backup, so it was impossible for him to expend all his Dharma power on the restrictions of the palace. Seeing that Pu Jianyuan had broken the restrictions, he didn't say anything and flew out of the palace. "Where do you think you're going?" The Ning turtle in Zhan Yu's hand shook, and an earthy yellow light shot towards Ling Jingyi's back like a solidified pillar of earth. When Ling Jingyi was flying, he had already put away the jade pendant. In his hand was the magic tool of Misty Mountain, the jade engraving. The jade engraving in Ling Jingyi's hand was different from when it was in Xue Xue's hand. Dozens of thin white silk threads shot out from the jade engraving and quickly shuttled around Ling Jingyi's body. Just before the pillar of earth hit, it had already formed a cocoon-like milky white shell around Ling Jingyi. But just as Ling Jingyi's figure passed through the palace's door, the light pillar caught up and hit Ling Jingyi's cocoon. Zilala, there was another burst of fine sound. Ling Jingyi's body actually slightly stagnated. Immediately after, he activated his Fa Li and flew up, dodging the earth-colored light beam. Looking at the fog cocoon again, it quickly intertwined and recovered in the blink of an eye. Zhan Yu, Qian Yuming, and Pu Jianyuan had also caught up to Ling Jingyi. Seeing that Ling Jingyi had stopped, Pu Jianyuan sped up and stood in front of Ling Jingyi and the Misty Mountains formation. He raised his voice and said, "Fellow Taoist Ling, seeing that we might be related by blood, this poor Taoist will give you a word of advice. Either you surrender yourself or put down your artifact and fly away from this poor Taoist. This poor Taoist will definitely not take your life and will let you live." Haha, Pu Jianyuan, you are really ambitious. Not only do you want my Misty Mountain, you also want the Fire Ape. Don't you want this magic tool? Ling Jingyi laughed loudly. Today, I will let you have a taste of the power of a magic tool. As he spoke, he clapped his hands and a net-like magic tool flew out from his hands. Under the circulation of his magic power, it flew towards Pu Jianyuan. As soon as the web-like magical tool left his hand, clusters of flames flickered from the gaps of the magical tool. The surrounding temperature also increased abruptly. Pu Jianyuan had no choice but to throw out the immortal binding ring that he had previously refined. These two magic tools had already fought in the flame forest swamp, and Pu Jianyuan didn't have any magic tools that were suitable for him. Naturally, he threw it out. The immortal binding ring was refined with a high-level imprisonment spell formation. If it was a normal sneak attack, it would be useful. Now that it was blocked by the fire net, the flames were burning the immortal binding ring. This made Pu Jianyuan's heart ache. "Fellow Taoist Pu, don't worry, I will help you." Qian Yuming let out a long laugh. He patted the spirit storage pouch at his waist, and a colorful figure darted out from it. Chapter 1850. "Io, what is this?" Hearing Qian Yuming's voice, Ling Jingyi was slightly surprised. He looked over and saw a spirit beast that looked like a tiger but not a tiger, like a lion but not a lion, pouncing on him like lightning. The spirit beast's roar resounded through the mountains and rivers, causing his heart to tremble and the flow of his spiritual power to stagnate. Damn it! Ling Jingyi waved his hand without hesitation, and the thunder palm in his hand immediately shot out. Clang, clang, clang. The half-foot-long thunder palm flew toward the spirit beast. The spirit beast was frightened and didn't dare to use its body to meet the attack. Instead, it tilted its body and whipped its tail at the thunder palm. Although the thunder palm was scattered, the spirit beast's body also stopped. Fortunately, this is a first-grade spirit beast. After testing the strength of the spirit beast, Ling Jingyi's heart was slightly relieved. "Ha, fellow Taoist Qian, your liger beast doesn't seem to be very good." Zhan Yu laughed. The Ning turtle in his hand shook, and another thick beam of light flashed out in the air, attacking Ling Jingyi in an arc. "How can I's liger beast be measured by others?" Qian Yuming sneered. Without any pretense, he had already urged the liger beast. The liger beast only hesitated for a moment before pouncing on Ling Jingyi again. At this time, Ling Jingyi was attacked from the back and abdomen. He clapped his hand again, and a flat box flew into the air. However, before he could cast a spell, the liger beast had already pounced in front of him. Its two front claws swayed in midair, and several afterimages streaked across, slapping on Ling Jingyi's back. Without any sound, the liger beast tore a 1-foot-long crack in the fog cocoon that even the Ning turtle could not break. Moreover, the crack could not be repaired in a short time. Oh no! Ling Jingyi did not expect the liger beast to have such power. Just as he was complaining in his heart, the Ning turtle's beam of light struck. Purring! Another muffled sound rang out, and Ling Jingyi's body moved down exactly 3 feet. Moreover, the beam of light came from the gap that the lion-tiger beast had torn open. The previously thin fog cocoon had actually been pierced through by the beam of light. Fellow Taoist Qian, why don't you make a move? Otherwise, I will take the lead in our agreement. Zhan Yu shouted at Qian Yuming as he held the turtle in his hand and accumulated his magic power. Are eyes liger beasts not enough? Although Qian Yuming said that, it was clear that they had already made an agreement. Qian Yuming threw the desert pearl in his hand into the air. From the desert pearl, the yellow sand that covered the sky and covered the earth rushed towards Ling Jingyi. Wang! Under the yellow sand, Ling Jingyi could no longer hold on. With a slap of his hand, a fiery red hook flew out. It drew a red arc in the air and rushed into the yellow sand. Xingla, like a pair of scissors cutting silk, the yellow sand was actually cut into 2 by Ling Jingyi's glorious Sunday. The yellow sand that was in front of Ling Jingyi's eyes earlier disappeared in a flash. What a great treasure! At the side, Pu Jianyuan laughed loudly. An identical fiery red hook also flew into the air and shot towards the glorious sun that had already turned into a full moon. It was Pu Jianyuan's magic weapon, Shadow Moon. Creak, creak. The 2 magic weapons of the same origin collided together. There was no huge tremor as expected, but instead, there was friction. Fellow Ling, do you have any other moves? With a loud roar, the liger beast once again pounced towards Ling Jingyi's back. Zhan Yu's congealed turtle had already formed and a beam of light flew out again. Hiss! With a sound, the liger beast's sharp front claws once again tore apart the fog cocoon that had just recovered by more than half. Pooh! A huge tremor. This time, the beam of light hit the area where the liger beast tore apart. Most of the beam of light expanded the area where the liger beast tore apart, while a small portion hit Ling Jingyi's body. The light on Ling Jingyi's body was annihilated, and the yellow talisman protecting his body was destroyed. Ling Jingyi's body also staggered in the air. His face turned red, then pale, and a trace of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Fortunately, as Ling Jingyi circulated his magic power, several magic weapons were able to withstand and were not destroyed by others. Since it has already come to this point, fellow Ling, are you still going to persist? Pu Jianyuan asked with a smile as he commanded Shadow Moon. Pu Jianyuan, if you consider yourself to be a cultivator of my Dawn Rain continent and the patriarch of Flying Phoenix Ridge, then fight with this poor Taoist alone. Even if this poor Taoist dies in your hands, this poor Taoist will give this misty mountain to you. If you borrow the hands of others to kill so what? Ling Jingyi was unexpectedly calm as he issued a challenge. Ling Jingyi, do you think I am a 3-year-old child? How could I be fooled by this kind of provocation? Pu Jianyuan laughed loudly and circulated his magic power. That Shadow Moon's brilliance became more and more brilliant, gradually covering the sun. It was obvious that he had the upper hand. Pu Jianyuan, you will regret this. Ling Jingyi quickly circulated his magic power, and the sun was barely evenly matched with Shadow Moon. Let this poor Taoist lend fellow Taoist Pu another hand. Qian Yuming smiled and pointed his finger. That desert pearl in the air once again emitted a yellow brilliance, and another batch of sand fell down like clouds. At this time, Ling Jingyi no longer had any magic weapons to resist. With a wave of his hand, dozens of yellow talismans were thrown out. With a burst of crackling sounds, these yellow talismans were all destroyed by the yellow sand. With a rumbling sound, Ling Jingyi was actually completely submerged by the yellow sand. When the yellow sand disappeared, the fog cocoon around Ling Jingyi also disappeared. That magic weapon, jade engraving, flickered with a faint brilliance and stopped in front of Ling Jingyi's eyes. Moreover, Ling Jingyi's face was deathly pale, without a trace of blood. Looking at that net-like magic weapon, the flames had already been extinguished, and it was tightly wrapped by the immortal binding ring. The sun was also submerged by Shadow Moon, turning into a round magic weapon, spinning randomly in the air. Sai, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator facing 3 cultivators of the same cultivation level, the outcome could only be like this. Fellow Pooh, our agreement has already been fulfilled. The rest is up to you. Zhan Yu pointed his hand, and the Ning turtle flew back into his hand. Qian Yuming also kept the desert pearl, leaving the lion-tiger beast to guard at the side. Ling Jingyi? Pu Jianyuan grinned and slapped his hand. That immortal binding ring released the fire net and flew towards Ling Jingyi. Daddy! With a cry, Ling Feiyun flew over from afar, and a string of fire snake talismans also flew towards the immortal binding ring. I originally wanted to deal with this guy later. I didn't expect him to come out now. Pu Jianyuan simply did not put Ling Feiyun in his eyes. With a wave of his Taoist robe, a similar fire snake technique was shot out. A stream of flames instantly wrapped around Ling Feiyun. Under the tongue of the flames, Ling Feiyun's body flashed chaotically, and the defensive yellow talismans were about to be destroyed. Chapter 1851. At this moment, a red communication talisman flew out of the fog and landed in front of Ling Jingyi. Who's visiting? Pu Jianyuan stared blankly for a moment before becoming vigilant in his heart. However, when he looked at Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming on the side, his heart relaxed. He understood very well that the Misty Mountain and Flying Phoenix Ridge were both small cultivation families. There weren't many foundation establishment cultivators that they could make friends with. He had also spent a great deal of effort to make friends with these two, and had also paid a great price in exchange for their help. How could Ling Jingyi possibly have higher cultivation level cultivators come to visit? Ling Jingyi looked at the message amulet in front of him and was overjoyed. He knew that a helper had come. However, his face showed even more worry. He looked at Pu Jianyuan but did not move. He did not crush the message amulet. What? Fellow Taoist Ling, do you want I to burn your son to death? Pu Jianyuan glanced at the motionless Ling Jingyi and asked coldly. Oh, but... Ling Jingyi was secretly happy, but his face showed helplessness. He clenched his teeth, stretched out his hand, and unwillingly crushed the communication talisman. Uncle, I'm back. Shue couldn't suppress her surprised voice. Pu Jianyuan laughed, looked up and said, Good. Sure enough, it's a good opportunity to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Ling Jingyi panicked. He didn't expect it to be Shue, but then he sneered. Shue is now a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. She must have come out to gain experience. You actually dare to take her life. Do you still want your Flying Phoenix Ridge to be safe? I naturally know that she is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, but can a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect go back home? Since she can come back, she must have hidden it from the sect. I will kill her, who will know? Pu Jianyuan was happy. But after hearing this, Ling Jingyi, who had just calmed down, turned pale again. Fellow Taoist Pu. Zhan Yu looked at Qian Yuming and said in a low voice, I didn't agree with you to be a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. I won't stop you, but, if the Imperial Thunder Sect comes, don't blame I for not helping you. I have the same idea. Qian Yuming naturally wouldn't offend the Imperial Thunder Sect and hurriedly said, Rest assured, fellow Taoists. This kind of thing is naturally I's own decision. As long as you don't take the initiative to tell others, I will be satisfied. I want to say it, but I don't dare to say it. Qian Yuming sneered. Great. Pu Jianyuan smiled and said, When the matter is settled, I will definitely not go back on my words. Alright. Qian Yuming and Zhan Yu took 2 steps back and stood quietly in the air. What? Fellow Taoist Ling, do you still not want to let your Shue enter the mountain? As Pu Jianyuan spoke, he looked at Ling Feiyun and formed a seal. The extinguished flames around Ling Feiyun flew out again. Father, don't worry. Ling Feiyun gritted his teeth. It seemed that the flames had already penetrated his defensive talisman. Boy won't beg for mercy even if he dies. Hurry up and send out the message talisman. Tell sister to run for her life. Sure enough, you are a benevolent and righteous boy. Pu Jianyuan grinned. He turned to look at Ling Jingyi and said, You want to let your own son die for a woman who is not your own? But Ling Feiyun angrily shouted. He reversed his true qi and was about to commit suicide. Although his actions were heroic, Pu Jianyuan didn't expect it. However, he was only a qi refining cultivator and was far inferior to Pu Jianyuan. Pu Jianyuan felt that something was amiss, so he immediately waved his Taoist robe and used a confinement technique to restrain Ling Feiyun. Bam! Ling Feiyun fell down the steps like a boulder. He rolled down the steps for another 10 feet before stopping. The flames around his body were also extinguished by the force of the fall. Since you don't want to open the formation, I can only do it myself. Pu Jianyuan smiled and pointed his finger. The immortal binding ring tightly bound Ling Jingyi. Only then did he feel relieved and walked in front of Ling Jingyi and pulled the storage bag from his waist. Ling Jingyi's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. However, he was tightly bound. Even if he wanted to struggle, he didn't have the slightest bit of magic power. Heh, this jade pendant? Pu Jianyuan took out the jade pendant and looked at the contents of the bag of holding. A smile appeared on his face as he tied the bag of holding to his waist. Then, after a brief inspection, he activated his magic power and did the thing he regretted the most in his life. Following the jade pendant, a fire swallow flew into the fog in the mountains. Not long after, a beautiful figure flew to the front of the mountain. Wasn't it the impatient Xue Xue? Pu Jianyuan was ecstatic when he scanned the area with his mind power. However, this ecstasy only lasted for a moment before it was replaced by a look of astonishment. This astonishment only lasted for a moment before Pu Jianyuan's face was immediately covered by a thick layer of panic. Because, in his divine sense, not only did Xue Xue, who was at the peak of the qi refining realm, but also Xiaohua, who was at the peak of the qi refining realm. Even Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian, who were at the middle of the foundation establishment realm, came out of the fog. This is bad. Pu Jianyuan hurriedly looked at Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming. The two of them were also extremely panicked. However, even though they were panicking, the three of them did not dare to stay in the air. Instead, they hurriedly tidied their clothes and went forward. Uncle? Xue Xue first saw Ling Jingyi, and her face immediately turned pale. Then, she saw Pu Jianyuan and the others and understood what was going on. However, since Xiang Yang, who was at the middle of the foundation establishment realm, was behind her, how could she be afraid? She completely ignored Pu Jianyuan and the others and flew toward Ling Jingyi. However, before she could get close to Ling Jingyi, she saw Ling Feiyun, who had fallen on the stairs. She ignored Ling Jingyi and flew toward Ling Feiyun. Feiyun. Xiaohua flew behind Xue Xue and naturally saw the scene. Although he was not as clear as Xue Xue, he guessed most of the situation. Seeing Xue Xue fly toward Ling Feiyun, he flew in front of Ling Jingyi and swept his divine sense. With a wave of his hand, a wisp of true samadhi fire flew out from his palm and burned the immortal binding ring. That immortal binding ring was just an imitation of an artifact, and its quality was not good. Under the true samadhi fire, it immediately burned like rotten grass and fell to the ground. As soon as the immortal binding ring fell, Ling Jingyi straightened his body and screamed, "Feiyun!" He quickly ran down the stairs. At this time, Xue Xue had already helped Ling Feiyun up. Her divine sense swept over him and knew that he was fine. However, the spell that bound Ling Feiyun was cast by Pu Jianyuan, and Xue Xue could not break it. She could only pull Ling Feiyun up the stairs. Xiaohua secretly sighed and flew up. He pulled Ling Jingyi's arm and brought him in front of Ling Feiyun. Then, with a wave of his hand, he broke Pu Jianyuan's spell. Xue Xue was in a hurry and did not think much. She only saw the miserable state of Ling Jingyi and Ling Feiyun and could not help but cry. "I am Pu Jianyuan of Flying Phoenix Mountain. Greetings to both of you." In the air, Pu Jianyuan quickly bowed. Seeing that Pu Jianyuan actually bowed, Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming understood in their hearts and did not dare to cup their hands. They also bowed to Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian and reported their names. Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian naturally saw the whole scene. They had long regarded Xue Xue as a sister-in-law. Now that they saw her family being attacked, they were extremely angry. However, they were disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect. Without knowing the whole story, they could not interfere in the affairs of the Cultivation families. Therefore, they only coldly returned the greeting and said lightly, "I am Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian. I am a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect's 10,000 Thunder Valley. You all keep the artifacts and spirit beasts and wait at the side." Seeing that Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian did not attack as soon as they met, Pu Jianyuan was happy. He secretly glanced at Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming and kept the artifacts and spirit beasts. However, when he collected the Shining Sun and Shadow Moon, there were some abnormalities. The two artifacts actually became one. Pu Jianyuan was happy at first, but then his face became sad. Ling Jingyi was brought to Ling Feiyun by Xiaohua. He released his divine sense and found that his son was fine. Only then did he feel relieved. He looked at Xiaohua with a complicated gaze and then looked at Xue Xue. He clapped his hands and took out 2 pills. He and Ling Feiyun both took them. After a while, when his magic power recovered a bit, he quickly flew into the air and bowed. "I, Ling Jingyi, greet the two of you." "Oh, we don't dare. Fellow Taoist Ling, we are disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect's 10,000 Thunder Valley, Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian. At this time, we are taking Xue Xue out to gain experience. I was tired and came to rest for a while." Xiang Yang returned the greeting and said, "I just want some water to drink and will leave immediately." Seeing that Xiang Yang's words were watertight, Ling Jingyi smiled bitterly and said, "I am very happy that fellow Taoist Xiang has come to visit. Unfortunately, it is not safe here. If fellow Taoist has the heart, please serve me tea in the hall." Seeing that Ling Jingyi wanted to pull him in, Xiang Yang shook his head and said, "This place has the Flying Phoenix Ridge, the Yellow Flower sect, and the Spirit Husbandry sect. As a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, I shouldn't be too entangled." Yen Qinglian naturally knew what her husband was thinking, but looking at the tears on Xue Xue's face and the pain in her eyes, she was already impatient. She pulled Xiang Yang's sleeve and said a few words. Xiang Yang's face was slightly troubled, but this was quickly swept away. He nodded and said, "However, since I encountered this, I can't help but ask a few more questions. You too, tell me the reason." "Fellow Taoist Xiang, let's talk in the hall." Ling Jingyi smiled apologetically. "No need, let's talk here." Xiang Yang flicked his sleeve and said, Ling Jingyi didn't dare to speak anymore, afraid that he would anger Xiang Yang and leave in a huff. Yes, this matter should have started more than 10 years ago. Pu Jianyuan didn't dare to be negligent, and without thinking, he told Xiang Yang about what happened in the Flame Forest Mountains. This was something that Xiaohua had experienced, and from what Pu Jianyuan said at the end, there wasn't anything that he was lying about. When he was done, Pu Jianyuan bowed and said, "Fellow Taoist Yang, this poor Taoist's family heirloom is missing. It was this guy who took it. This poor Taoist invited 2 of my friends to come and support me, but I just want this guy to swear a blood oath. If the magic tool has nothing to do with him, this poor Taoist will leave without saying anything." But he didn't dare to swear. "Tell me, how can this magic artifact have nothing to do with him? Today, Senior is here, so I hope that Senior can make the decision and take back I's family heirloom magic artifact." Chapter 1852. Damn it! Seeing that Pu Jianyuan was targeting him, Xiang Yang cursed in his heart. At the same time, he thought about how Zhenjie and Gantian forced Xiang Yang to make a heart oath in 10,000 Thunder Valley and was furious. Xiang Yang's face turned cold and his expression changed. Pu Jianyuan didn't know why, but his heart tightened. Zhan Yu also bowed and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiang, we also heard fellow Taoist Pu's story and felt that it was unfair for fellow Taoist Pu. His family's magic tool disappeared just like that. No one would be willing to let it go. Our cultivation sects boast of being the symbol of the cultivation aristocratic families. We have to ask about this matter. You Huang Huaman are interested in this? A smile appeared on Xiaohua's face. He recalled Zhan Yu, whom he had met at the trade fair in Jinghua City. Although Zhan Yu heard Xiaohua's mockery, Huang Huaman was indeed much smaller than Imperial Thunder Sect. He didn't dare to retort and could only smile. This is I's junior brother Xiaohua. Xiang Yang nodded. He, energy refinement disciple, can interrupt when Foundation establishment cultivators are talking. Only Imperial Thunder Sect disciples have such boldness. Zhan Yu sighed. Damn it. Xiaohua knew that Zhan Yu didn't dare to scold him, so he used such words to mock him. Junior Xiaohua greets the three seniors. Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. We don't dare, we don't dare. Pu Jianyuan and the other two didn't find Xiaohua's greeting strange and hurriedly returned the greeting. Fellow Taoist Xiang, fellow Taoist Zhan of the Yellow Flower Sect isn't the only one who thinks this. Even I'm feeling rather unconvinced. As such, I came here with fellow Taoist Pu to get to the bottom of this. Fellow cultivator Ling doesn't need to make any hard oath. As long as you hand over the magic artifact's whereabouts, I guarantee that fellow cultivator Pu won't pursue this matter any further. Isn't that right, fellow cultivator Pu? That's right, that's right. I's goal is the family's magic artifact. This is related to the inheritance of Flying Phoenix Ridge. I can't ignore it. Pu Jianyuan hurriedly followed up. Bullshit. Ling Feiyun was furious. He jumped up and said, just now, you were yelling about killing and fighting. You wanted to exterminate my Misty Mountain. How did you change in the blink of an eye? If not for Senior Xiang's arrival, I would have long become a corpse. Fiend. Seeing Ling Feiyun's rude words, Ling Jingyi became furious and scolded. Since Senior Xiang is here, he is the one in charge here. What are you saying? You still call yourself lousy? Are you tired of living? Xiaohua, who was standing to the side, was already laughing while covering his mouth. Ling Feiyun's face was also red. He bowed and said, Junior? Junior was really angry. Please forgive me, Senior. Sigh. Xiang Yang flicked his sleeves with a troubled expression. To be honest, this matter was really easy to resolve. With him and Yan Qinglian working together, killing Pu Jianyuan and the other two was extremely easy. However, seeing that Ling Jingyi's hands and feet were not clean, why should she do things for him? Furthermore, Xue was already a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. She didn't have much connection with the Misty Mountain, so he might not be able to gain her favor by helping her. Since he was able to save Ling Jingyi by chance today, he was already benevolent enough. If he went any further, he would not like it. Forget it. Xiang Yang flicked his sleeves and said in a deep voice, You guys settle your own matters. I am not interested. Fellow Taoist Xiang. Although Ling Jingyi knew that this matter was not out of his expectations, he still did not give up and said in a low voice. What? Fellow Taoist Ling, if you can make a heart oath, I will immediately kill these three people without you saying a second word. Xiang Yang rolled his eyes and said very proudly. Although Xiang Yang was cowering in front of helplessness, he was still a middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator. How could the early-stage Foundation establishment Ling Jingyi compare to his aura? Ling Jingyi immediately shrunk his neck and did not speak anymore. Seeing that Xiang Yang had relented, Pu Jianyuan and the other two let out a long breath and bowed. Thank you for your righteousness, fellow Taoist Xiang. Although Xue looked at Yan Qinglian pitifully, she knew in her heart that unless she made a move, Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian, as disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect, would not make a move. At this moment, a cold voice rang out again. Since eldest senior brother has finished speaking, then it's time for this poor Taoist to speak. Pu Jianyuan and the other two were stunned. They looked up and saw Xiaohua flying out. Junior brother Xiao? Xiang Yang was stunned. Eldest senior brother, you represent the Imperial Thunder Sect and have already dealt with this matter very cleanly. As a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, I will also obey eldest senior brother's decision. Xiaohua said with a smile, however, this matter still involves me, so I can't leave. Since Senior Pu is here today, it is also good to solve this matter. Xiaohua. Xue was very anxious and hurriedly gave Xiaohua a look. Of course, she knew that Xiaohua had the Flying Phoenix Mountain Range's inherited magic tool, and she also knew that Ling Jingyi would definitely not dare to speak of it. Everything would be easy when she or Xiaohua reached Foundation establishment, but she did not expect Xiaohua to jump out now. Junior brother Xiao, what do you mean? Xiang Yang still did not understand. Hehe, eldest senior brother, this matter happened before I entered the Imperial Thunder sect. I just happened to solve it here. Eldest senior brother, as a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, since it is inconvenient for you to make a move, then just stand there and don't do anything. Xiaohua said, and with a wave of his hand, he took out the Flying Phoenix Mountain Range's magic tool that looked like a big seal and floated in the air. Ah? Is it with you? Pu Jinyuan's face was full of joy, but he also asked in astonishment. Why is it with I? You don't need to ask. Xiaohua waved his hand, and the magic tool disappeared again. Lung Leng understood. If you have the ability, then take the magic tool and don't find trouble with the Fog Mountain in the future. However, I have said it first. If you want to make a move, then don't blame I for not showing mercy. Haha, the Imperial Thunder sect is really a young hero. Pu Jianyuan said with a smile. An Qi refining disciple actually dares to talk to a Foundation establishment senior like that. If the fellow Taoist of the Imperial Thunder sect is not here, I'm afraid that I would teach you a lesson on behalf of fellow Taoist Zhao's master. When Pu Jianyuan said that, he still secretly glanced at Xiang Yang, but Xiang Yang sneered. My Imperial Thunder sect's disciple, no matter what, it is not fellow Taoist Pu's turn to teach him a lesson. Hehe, I was just saying. Pu Jianyuan said with a smile. I didn't hear fellow Taoist Zhao's words just now. Hehe, fellow Taoist Pu, it seems like you don't want this magic tool anymore. Xiaohua sneered. This? How could Pu Jianyuan let go of his family's magic tool? He turned his head and said to Xiang Yang pitifully, Fellow Taoist Xiang, this magic tool is related to my Flying Phoenix Mountain Range's inheritance. I must take it back. I ask fellow Taoist Xiang to make a decision. Xiang Yang frowned slightly. He didn't understand why Xiaohua would reveal the magic tool at this time. Eldest senior brother, you don't have to worry about this matter. Since I took out the magic tool, I have my own reasons. Xiaohua said with a smile. Chapter 1853. And you deal with it yourself? Xiang Yang knew that Xiaohua always made his own decisions. Even if he had no other choice, he would still give him a discount. His words? It's better not to be too forceful. Then he turned to Pu Jianyuan and said, This matter doesn't involve my Imperial Thunder sect. I won't interfere. Is that so? If fellow Taoist Xiang won't interfere, then what about fellow Taoist Yen? Pu Jianyuan was slightly delighted and turned to look at Yen Qinglian. Yen Qinglian was slightly annoyed. Her plan was to not say anything and wait for Xiaohua to be in trouble. She didn't say that she wouldn't interfere. But Pu Jianyuan was used to being careful and immediately asked, making things difficult for Yen Qinglian. Looking at Xiang Yang, Yen Qinglian reluctantly said, I won't interfere in this matter either. Good, thank you for your righteousness. Pu Jianyuan was overjoyed and bowed to thank them. No need to thank us. Xiang Yang said coldly with a wave of his sleeve. Pu Jianyuan knew clearly that he could attack, but he absolutely couldn't hurt Xiaohua. If he hurt Xiaohua, he could predict that Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian would attack without hesitation and kill him directly. He wanted Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian to swear that they wouldn't interfere, but did he dare? Just as Pu Jianyuan expected, although Xiang Yang didn't send a voice transmission to Yen Qinglian, the two of them looked at each other and understood each other's thoughts. They absolutely wouldn't let Xiaohua suffer a loss. Forget it. If there's a chance to defeat this arrogant brat and get the magic tool, that's it. Pu Jianyuan made up his mind and flew into the air. With a wave of his hand, he took out several yellow talismans and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Xiao, I will attack. If you're defeated by I, you have to take out the magic tool. Of course. Xiaohua also laughed. However, since you're going to attack, don't forget that this junior won't be merciful. Okay? I know. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please be careful. As he spoke, he waved his hand and several fireball talismans flew out. The fireball talismans in the hands of a foundation establishment cultivator really multiplied their power. The foot-sized fireballs flew toward Xiaohua. Good. Xiaohua roared and asked Xue Xue, "Junior sister Xue, do you want this bastard to live or die?" Xue Xue's face was full of worry, and she repeatedly said, "Xiaohua, be careful, I don't want anything else." "Ah, since junior sister Xue says so, then I will let him die." Xiaohua sneered and waved his hand. Dozens of fireball talismans that were a bit bigger than Pu Jinyuan's fireballs were also thrown out. Not only did they block Pu Jinyuan's fireballs, they also submerged Pu Jinyuan like flowing fire. Poor Pu Jinyuan. Although his cultivation level was at the early stage of foundation establishment, he couldn't compare to Yan Xiefeng. He didn't have any defensive treasures to protect himself. When he saw the exploding fireballs flying towards him, and the surrounding air seemed to be burning, his face turned pale and he turned to flee. Even though he was flying very fast, under the attack of the fireball talismans, a lot of the brilliance of his defense was annihilated, and he cut a sorry figure. Pu Jinyuan narrowed his eyes, clearly somewhat angry. He clapped his hand and a triangular magic tool that was 3 inches in size appeared. He activated his magic power, and the triangular magic tool blossomed with a layer of rose-red brilliance. Within the brilliance was a wisp of flame. It rushed into the air and smashed toward Xiaohua. When Xiaohua saw this, he used the same trick again. Dozens of fireball talismans flew out and blocked in front of him. Pa, pa, poch, several sounds rang out. The fireball talismans shook the triangular magic tool askew, but the magic tool still passed through these fireball talismans and flew towards Xiaohua in a curve like a meteor. You want to fight a foundation establishment cultivator with a few fireball talismans? You're really delusional. Pu Jinyuan sneered. At the same time, he also felt a burst of arrogance. He really didn't have much interest in Xiaohua, who was in Qi refinement. His thoughts were still on Xiangyang and the others. Careful! When Xue Xue saw the triangular magic tool whistling through the air with an irresistible flame, she was greatly alarmed. He, a foundation establishment cultivator, is only SOSO. Xiaohua's figure flew up. He clapped his hand, and the yang leaf fan appeared in his hand. He activated his magic power, and a scarlet light appeared from the yang leaf fan. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed into it like a swarm of bees. A magic tool? When the yang leaf fan was taken out, its power was different. Not only was Pu Jinyuan shocked, everyone present was shocked. Even Xiangyang was slightly stunned. He glanced at Yan Qinglian. Yan Qinglian's eyes were also filled with confusion. They knew that Xiaohua had a magic tool called the Cloud-Suppressing Seal, but after all, it was an incomplete magic tool. This yang leaf fan was absolutely different. Not only was it complete, but its grade was also not low. Whoosh, Xiaohua waved his hand, and a scarlet fire dragon appeared from the yang leaf fan. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced towards the triangular magic tool. Not good. Pu Jinyuan was greatly alarmed. He didn't have many magic tools to begin with, and just now, the immortal binding ring was mysteriously burned by Xiaohua's true samadhi fire. Pu Jinyuan had no place to complain, so how could he bear to use this magic tool to fight a magic tool? However, before he could form a seal to retrieve the magic tool, the triangular magic tool was submerged by the fire dragon of the yang leaf fan. The magic tool's flame was indeed extraordinary. In an instant, it severed the connection between Pu Jinyuan and the magic tool. Moreover, in a short moment, a loud pung sound was heard. The flames burst out into pieces. The triangular magic tool had already been burned by the yang leaf fan's flame. It's this powerful? Everyone was flabbergasted again. But what surprised them was still behind. They originally thought that Xiaohua, who was in Qi refinement, could only fan the yang leaf fan once. Who would have thought that Xiaohua would casually fan the fan again? Another fire dragon flew out, and its tail caught up with the flame that had stopped in midair just now. The two dragons combined to become an even larger fire dragon. It whistled through the air and pounced towards Pu Jianyuan. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you forced me to do this. Pu Jianyuan was anxious and angrily shouted, I have no choice but to bully the weak. As he spoke, Pu Jianyuan slapped his forehead. The pressure of an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator was immediately released. Like a huge rock, it pressed toward Xiaohua. At the same time, Pu Jianyuan's figure also swiftly fled, wanting to avoid the fire dragon's attack. Xiaohua. Although Pu Jianyuan's pressure wasn't directed at Shui could still feel the instinctive fear and promptly cried out. Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian's expressions also slightly changed. They raised their hands and were about to slap their foreheads, preparing to release the pressure. But at this time, they heard Xiaohua's arrogant laughter again. Haha, you're just an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, what are you shouting for? A scene that shocked everyone present appeared once again. They saw Xiaohua's body only stagnate for a moment, then with a tremble, a scarlet phoenix dharma body that was close to 20 feet in size flew out from Xiaohua's body. With a clear cry, it rushed into the air. Its slender phoenix eyes flickered with a cold light that looked disdainfully at the world. Seeing the phoenix dharma body that covered everyone's heads, Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian's hands stopped. Their eyes were also stunned, and their mouths were also wide open. Both of them felt a kind of absurd feeling in their hearts. This is Qi refinement Xiaohua? This was naturally still Qi refinement Xiaohua. They saw Xiaohua release the phoenix dharma body, blocking Pu Jianyuan's foundation establishment cultivator's pressure. His own body was already able to freely fly. Go! Xiaohua coldly snorted. The phoenix dharma body flapped its wings in midair and pounced towards Pu Jianyuan. The pitiful Pu Jianyuan had just escaped from the fire dragon's attack, and before he could completely dodge the fire dragon, the phoenix dharma body grabbed at his head. Hearing the wind of the sharp claws in midair, Pu Jianyuan panicked. He hurriedly surged his magic power, flung his sleeve, and used a spell to block in front of him. But with a pu sound, Pu Jianyuan's spell was immediately caught. Then, with a terch sound, the phoenix dharma body's remaining power tore half of Pu Jianyuan's Taoist robe sleeve. His body's defense was almost broken by the phoenix dharma body's claw. Pu Jianyuan's face was deathly pale. Only now did he understand Xiaohua's power. At the same time, he also knew Xiaohua's previous warning and the question Xiaohua asked Shui. Fight! Pu Jianyuan clapped his hands, and the combined bright sun and shadow moon flew out from his storage bag. At this time, Pu Jianyuan had no time to think about why these two magic tools were combined. Instead, he activated Shadow Moon's spell and poured his magic power into it. With a wang sound, Shadow Moon emitted a crimson brilliance. At the same time, the bright sun beside Shadow Moon also began to rotate. With the rotation of the bright sun, Shadow Moon actually revealed a phantom, like a magic weapon, and flew out. Go! Pu Jianyuan's face lit up with joy. He urged his magic power and pointed his finger. Shadow Moon's phantom rotated and rushed into the air, flying towards the phoenix dharma body. With a jie sound, the phoenix dharma body's wings flapped, and its rather large body actually twisted in midair. Its style was extremely similar to Xiaohua's Big Dipper God Fist. It dodged Shadow Moon's phantom, and immediately, the phoenix dharma body's sharp claws tore at that phantom. At this time, the fire dragon of Yang Fan once again caught up with Pu Jianyuan and submerged Shadow Moon's body. Boom! The sound was like a lit furnace, and the flames burned the bright sun and Shadow Moon. Quick! Pu Jianyuan pointed his finger again, and Shadow Moon suddenly enlarged. Just as it was about to rotate, a sudden change occurred. A powerful suction force was born from Shadow Moon and Bright Sun, and directly extracted 90% of Pu Jianyuan's magic power. Just when Pu Jianyuan was at a loss of what to do, an inexplicable fluctuation came out from Shadow Moon and enveloped Pu Jianyuan. Puff puff puff. An inexplicable sound that only Pu Jianyuan could hear came out from his body. Then the blood in his body started to boil. An incomparable strength and a feeling of rebirth spontaneously arose in his body. Bloodline awakening? Pu Jianyuan instantly knew. Ha! Pu Jianyuan laughed heartily. His arms shook, and a fire ape phantom that was the same size as his body emerged from his body with difficulty. At the same time, a kind of pressure of the middle stage of foundation establishment was released. Jie Xiaohua's Phoenix Dharma body crushed Shadow Moon's phantom. Seeing that the fire ape Dharma body had actually appeared, it let out a clear cry, turned around, flapped its wings, and pounced. Chapter 1854. Xue Xue smiled apologetically. Senior brother, this is Misty Mountain's family matter. I am embarrassed to say more. Please forgive me. It's fine, it's fine. Xiang Yang flicked his sleeve and said, I asked this abruptly. The inside of the palace was very cold and cheerless, and Xue Xue seemed to be very isolated. After finally finding a clean place, she smiled apologetically and said, Thank you for your kindness, senior brother. I indeed have some unspeakable reasons, so I want to stay in Misty Mountain for a while. Senior brother and senior sister can rest here. Xiaohua, if you have time, you can go to the front mountain. Feiyun admires you very much, and his heart is pure and kind, very different from my uncle's scheming. Can you give him a few pointers? Xiaohua pointed at his nose with a bitter smile and said, I want to give him pointers, but I don't know where to start. If it's time for him to build his foundation, I can help. Although Xue Xue didn't understand the meaning of Xiaohua's words, she didn't make things difficult for Xiaohua. Nodding, she saluted Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian and flew back to the front mountain. After Xue Xue left, Xiang Yang frowned and said, Junior brother Xiao, Xue Xue seems a bit strange. I don't know what Ling Jingyi said to her. Of course, when she came out of Imperial Thunder Sect, I felt something was wrong, but I can't say why. Xiaohua naturally thought of the jade slip Xue Xue gave him and said, It's even more inappropriate in Misty Mountain, but since she didn't say, I can't ask. I'll slowly find an opportunity in the future. But everyone has their own secrets, some things are better not known. Yan Qinglian nodded and said, Xiaohua agreed, then looked at Yan Qinglian and Xiang Yang, pondered for a moment and said, Senior brother, from what you said, your lifespan is almost up. Even if your cultivation improves, you can't break through to golden core, so I won't give you this opportunity. Opportunity? Xiang Yang was surprised and said, Is what you said just now true? Of course. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Senior brother and senior sister treat me like brothers. How can I not think of them when I have some opportunities? Yan Qinglian smiled and said, I can't use the mother-child spirit fruit. Senior-in-law, don't worry. You will definitely be able to use this. Xiaohua said with a smile, however, I still have to ask senior sister-in-law to make a heart oath. You can't mention this matter to anyone. Not to mention eldest senior brother, you can't even tell master and master's wife. This? Yan Qinglian looked at Xiang Yang. Xiang Yang's eyes turned a few times before he smiled and said, This brother is really tired. I'll go and rest for a while. Qinglian, you give Xiaohua some pointers on his cultivation. After saying that, Xiang Yang walked away. After Xiang Yang left, Xiaohua took out a jade slip and immersed his divine sense into it. He erased some parts of the jade slip and passed it to Yan Qinglian. Senior sister-in-law, this is the cultivation technique's mnemonic chant. Please take a look. 3 days later, little brother will come over. Alright. Yan Qinglian took the jade slip with some hesitation. If it was before she came out of the Imperial Thunder Sect to cultivate, she definitely wouldn't have hesitated to make a hard oath. But now, Xiaohua actually revealed an astonishing strength. This was completely different from the little junior brother she wanted to protect. She couldn't help but feel suspicious. Even if she could confirm that the possibility of Xiaohua being possessed was too small, she still didn't dare to believe it completely. Seeing this, Xiaohua didn't urge her and turned to leave. Wait a moment. Yan Qinglian immersed her divine sense into the jade slip and looked at it briefly. She smiled and said, I was worried too much. It's fine, senior sister-in-law. Little brother had no choice but to do this. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Immediately, Yan Qinglian made a heart oath in front of Xiaohua. Seeing Yan Qinglian meditating on the jade slip, Xiaohua walked out and saw Xiang Yang sitting not far from the quiet room. He also walked over and sat cross-legged not far from him. He took out the jade slip that Ling Jingyi gave him and carefully looked at the things inside. Xiang Yang knew that Xiaohua was sitting next to him, but he didn't say anything and just focused on cultivating. Xiaohua raised his eyes and looked at the silent eldest senior brother. He felt a bit strange in his heart and secretly regretted revealing his strength. However, he also knew that this strange feeling was only on the surface. After a few days, it definitely wouldn't exist. 3 days passed quickly. Xiaohua entered the quiet room and put away the jade slip. He asked, "Senior sister-in-law, are you familiar with the cultivation method inside?" "Hee, I'm already familiar with it. I also saw this kind of incantation when I was young. Although I haven't practiced it, it's nothing to a foundation establishment middle-stage cultivator like me." Yan Qinglian still didn't know what Xiaohua was selling. Senior sister-in-law, please seal your 5 senses and don't let your divine sense out. Little brother will give you a great opportunity, Xiaohua said in all seriousness. But Yan Qinglian looked at the jade slip and was already very relieved. She sealed her 5 senses and withdrew her divine sense into her Naiwen palace. After a while, Yan Qinglian felt a bit of coolness on her arm. Her heart moved. Naturally, she knew that this was what Xiaohua wanted to give her. Without thinking, she followed the cultivation method in the jade slip and refined this coolness into her body bit by bit. "Your senior sister-in-law has started cultivating?" Xiang Yang looked at Xiaohua and asked softly. Senior brother knows, it's exactly like that. Xiaohua knew that the trustworthy Xiang Yang definitely wouldn't release his divine sense. He said very seriously, "Let's wait and see senior sister-in-law's cultivation progress. Little brother also doesn't know when I'll be able to come out." Oh, Xiang Yang didn't comment. Xiaohua smiled and said, "However, little brother can guarantee that even if senior brother comes out of Misty Mountain and directly returns to the mountain, Master will definitely not scold you." But Xiang Yang spat and said, "Do you think Master is willing to scold people?" Immediately, Xiang Yang sighed again. "Alas, junior brother Xiao, with your magical abilities, now. I'm afraid you're only slightly inferior to me. You can be called the #1 expert under foundation establishment, but why can't you build your foundation? Moreover, that day when you fought with Yan Xiefeng, why did you keep hiding your strength? You only need to reveal a little bit and at least, Master won't scold you anymore, right? Are you sure Master won't scold me again?" Xiaohua asked thoughtfully. This Xiang Yang hesitated. "At least, junior brother Chui won't treat you like that, right?" It's good that senior brother knows. If little brother doesn't build his foundation, Master won't stop scolding me. Now it seems that even if little brother builds his foundation, this scolding won't stop." Xiaohua laughed loudly, his gaze somewhat fierce. As for Cui Hongshan, he's little brother's senior. Why would little brother care how he treats little brother? Xiang Yang suddenly woke up and said anxiously, "Junior brother Xiao, no matter what, junior brother Cui is still part of my myriad Thunder Valley, and he's also your little junior brother. You wouldn't." Thinking about how Xiaohua treated Pu Jinyuan before, Xiang Yang shuddered. Senior brother worries too much. With little brother's cultivation, I only need to stretch out my hand to pinch him to death. He's just like a loathsome fly. He thinks he's good, but he doesn't know that in little brother's eyes, he's just a joke. If he doesn't have any evil intentions towards little brother won't pay attention to him." Alas, Xiang Yang finally understood why Xiaohua refused to call Cui Hongshan senior brother. Cui Hongshan's magical abilities could directly pinch you to death, yet you still arrogantly asked him to call you senior brother. Wasn't this just courting death? At first, Xiaohua didn't lower himself to his level, which was already pretty good, but in the end he actually forced Xiaohua to call him senior. The word senior was admittedly easy to say, but was it easy for Cui Hongshan to accept? But then, Xiang Yang thought that his lifespan was not far away. In the future of Myriad Thunder Valley, it would obviously be this junior brother Xiao and junior brother Cui who would be in charge. Looking at Xiao Hua's cultivation and prospects, even his master couldn't compare to him. What about Cui Hongshan's situation in Myriad Thunder Valley? For a moment, Xiang Yang was somewhat worried. At this time, a crimson summoning talisman flew in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was slightly surprised, then smiled at Xiang Yang and said, "It seems that something happened to Xue Xue again. Senior brother, I'll go take a look. You stay here and protect senior sister. Then you go." Xiang Yang frowned, as if he didn't think about his own lifespan. Instead, he was worried about Cui Hongshan, thinking about how to resolve the conflict between the two in the future. But when Xiao Hua crushed the summoning talisman, it was an unfamiliar, young voice. Senior brother Xiao? Are you free right now? Can you come to the front mountain? Junior brother really admires you. Oh, junior brother is Ling Feiyun? Ha! Hearing this voice, Ling Feiyun's appearance appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. Seeing Xue Xue's love for him, he knew that the two had a very good relationship. How could Xiao Hua ignore Ling Feiyun's request? Immediately, Xiao Hua came out of the palace and flew to the front mountain. In the air, he met Ling Feiyun. From afar, Ling Feiyun bowed and greeted him, calling him senior brother. Ha! Seeing Ling Feiyun's excited appearance, Xiao Hua was also happy. He rarely showed his strength in front of others, so this was the first time he saw such a respectful expression. When he helped Ling Feiyun up, he smiled and said, "Junior brother Ling, what's the matter? I won't hide it from senior brother Xiao." That day, when junior brother was being trampled on, my heart was filled with endless regret. Why didn't I have a high cultivation? Although I wanted to kill the enemy at that time, I didn't have the strength to fight back. Just as I was about to be killed, senior brother Xiao suddenly appeared in my misty mountain. Junior brother really doesn't know how to express my gratitude. Junior brother only wants to have senior brother Zhao's cultivation one day, to be able to easily kill foundation establishment cultivators with just a peak qi refining cultivation. Ling Feiyun spoke incoherently. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. Actually, junior brother came to ask senior brother Xiao in private because I want to know. Senior brother Zhao's cultivation. Is there any shortcut or trick that allows you to have such a high cultivation with such a low cultivation? Looking at the eagerness in Ling Feiyun's eyes, what was the difference between him and when he was a rogue cultivator? Xiao Hua's face unconsciously showed a trace of a smile. However, after thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua disappointed Ling Feiyun and said, "I's cultivation path? I'm afraid it's not suitable for you." Chapter 1855. Pu Jianyuan didn't care about the phoenix's celestial body at all. He made hand seals and took advantage of the awakening of the bloodline in his body to stimulate the remaining true essence in his meridians. His spiritual power temporarily increased and reached the middle stage of foundation establishment. He activated Shadow Moon and a dozen phantoms like before flew towards Xiao Hua. "Quick!" Xiang Yang was shocked. He broke free from the shock of being dumbstruck. He quickly clapped his hands and wanted to release his pressure to stop Pu Jianyuan. But at this moment, an unforgettable scene appeared. Only to see Xiao Hua, who was standing under the brilliance of the dozens of shadow moons, suddenly moved. His figure was extremely fast, and in the air, a series of faint afterimages appeared, rushing towards the shadow moons that were flying over. And the strange thing was that every time his figure was about to collide with the phantoms, Xiao Hua inexplicably flashed and dodged the shadow moon's phantoms. And this flashing didn't affect his flight at all. In the very short time when Xiang Yang raised his hand and clapped his forehead, Xiao Hua had already flashed past the dozen shadow moon's phantoms, and he himself had already flown in front of Pu Jianyuan. Immediately afterward, Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and a dark spear tip appeared in his hand. It smoothly stabbed towards Pu Jianyuan's throat. Pa! Although Pu Jianyuan was extremely shocked that Xiao Hua had arrived in front of him in such a short period of time, he still waved his left hand. A half-foot-long thunder palm flew out and struck Xiao Hua's demonic spear. Pa! Another sound rang out. A foot-long thunder palm also flew out from Xiao Hua's left palm. It was precisely the thunder palm that had struck Pu Jianyuan. The two thunder palms collided and issued a rumbling sound. This kind of similar magic was the best test of each person's cultivation. Pu Jinyuan's thunder palm was instantly annihilated by Xiaohua's thunder palm, and Xiaohua's thunder palm's momentum was not reduced. It struck Pu Jinyuan's left shoulder socket like lightning. Pu Jinyuan's shoulder socket was flickering with brilliance. The defensive light shield was facing a fierce attack. Ouch! Pu Jinyuan was shocked. While urging his magic power to replenish his defense, he quickly flew back. At the same time, with a wave of his right hand, a palm-sized mirror appeared in front of the tip of the demonic spear. Poof! The tip of the demonic spear pierced through Pu Jinyuan's Taoist robe. Immediately after, there was a crisp cracking sound. The tip of the demonic spear actually pierced through Pu Jinyuan's spell and pierced his palm. Ah! Pu Jinyuan couldn't help but scream as a stream of blood flowed down from his wrist. However, the tip of the demonic spear was still blocked. The sudden change in magic power brought about by the awakening of Pu Jinyuan's bloodline could not be underestimated. However, just when Pu Jinyuan thought he had blocked Xiaohua's attack, he saw Xiaohua open his mouth, and a green and red light flashed. Pu Jinyuan's own boiling blood was suddenly enveloped by a throbbing that he had never experienced before, and his entire heart shrunk into a ball. Moreover, this throbbing made him feel as if he couldn't avoid it. At this moment, the magic power in his entire body suddenly became sluggish. Not good. This was probably Pu Jinyuan's last thought. Just as this thought appeared, Pu Jinyuan felt a chill in his throat, and everything disappeared from his eyes. Xiaohua's figure didn't stop. First, he put away the Dream Slayer, then he grabbed the storage pouch on Pu Jinyuan's waist and put it away without even looking at it. In mid-air, the moonlight that had lost control dimmed. Under the burning of the yang leaf fan, it seemed as if it was about to be annihilated. Xiaohua activated the yang leaf fan and put away the fire dragon. Then, he waved his hand and unceremoniously put the moonlight and radiant sun into the space. Then, he turned around and quietly hovered in the air. Dead silence, absolute dead silence. At this moment, the entire mist mountain didn't have the slightest movement. The several cultivators standing in front of Xiaohua were completely sluggish. Their eyes were wide open and filled with astonishment. However, in addition to astonishment, Shue's eyes were filled with joy. Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian's eyes were filled with doubt. Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming's eyes were filled with panic. Ling Jingyi's eyes were filled with fear, and Ling Feiyun's eyes were filled with excitement. Cough cough, Xiaohua was a bit embarrassed by being stared at by so many people. He awkwardly coughed twice and flew towards the crowd. Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming naturally dodged backwards, and Shui was so happy that she wanted to fly forward. When the three of them woke up at the same time, their figures stopped. Shui's face was flushed red, while Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming's faces were pale. Seeing Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian's vigilance and the magic power around them, Xiaohua was a bit puzzled. However, he didn't speak to Xiang Yang first. Instead, he looked at Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming and coldly said, "Two fellow Taoists, do you want to die or live?" This voice was so condescending, so merciless, so unlike the voice of a qi refining cultivator, and so unlike the voice of a foundation establishment senior. However, Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming felt that it was only natural. They clearly saw that Pu Jinyuan's magic power was close to the middle stage of foundation establishment. Although it couldn't be compared to the middle stage of foundation establishment, compared to Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming, it was much stronger. But unfortunately, Xiaohua had killed Pu Jinyuan when his bloodline was awakening. Then Xiaohua's divine ability? Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming didn't dare to imagine. But Jin wants to live. Zhan Yu's face scrunched up into a ball. With a pitiful expression, he bitterly said, "Senior Xiao, we were instigated by Pu Jinyuan. We just want to find justice for him. We really don't have any other evil thoughts. Senior, please judge clearly." Qian Yuming's small eyes no longer dared to be squeezed by the fat on his face. He opened his eyes wide and said urgently, "Before fellow Taoist Yang, fellow Taoist Yen, and fellow Taoist Xiao came. I'm afraid you didn't say that, right? Ling Jingyi sneered. Fellow Taoist Ling, you have to speak the truth. Zhan Yu immediately said. When fellow Taoist Shui came in, we didn't know that fellow Taoist Xiang and the others were behind her. What did we say? We valued the face of the Imperial Thunder sect greatly. We already said that we wouldn't do anything. That's right, fellow Taoist Ling, don't you think so? Qian Yuming quickly said. Ling Jingyi knew that they were telling the truth and was at a loss for words. Did I ask you to speak? Xiaohua glanced at Ling Jingyi and said coldly. Ling Jingyi felt guilty. He quickly shrunk his neck and winked at Xue Xue. Obviously, he wanted Xue Xue to speak and let Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming stay. Xue Xue wanted to listen to her uncle, but Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian didn't speak. How could she speak? Although Xiao Hua was her lover, she definitely wouldn't interfere with Xiao Hua's decision. Chapter 1856. Hee, do you two fellow Taoists want to live? Xiao Hua asked with a smile. Yes. Zhan Yu nodded like a chick pecking at rice. And, tell me clearly why you all are here. Xiao Hua continued, don't talk about justice and righteousness, I don't care. Zhan Yu hesitated and looked at Qian Yuming. Qian Yuming also had a difficult expression. Hee, looks like you don't want to live. Xiao Hua did not hesitate to clap his hand and took out the sun leaf fan. No. Zhan Yu hurriedly waved his hand and said, the three of us have already sworn a heart oath that we won't tell a fourth person about this matter. It seems. Pu Jianyuan has already fallen, so your heart oaths have also been broken? Also, am I the third person? Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. That's right. Qian Yuming woke up early and slapped his forehead and said, that day, the three of us swore a heart oath. Since Pu Jianyuan has already fallen, this heart oath is naturally invalid. Even Zhan Yu's heart relaxed. And then tell me the whole story. Xiao Hua nodded. Senior Xiao. Qian Yuming smiled apologetically and said, can I send a voice transmission? Don't call me senior, call me fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua nodded and said, you can send a voice transmission. Yes, fellow Taoist Xiao. Zhan Yu looked at Qian Yuming and said, fellow Taoist Qian, this matter started because of you, it's better that you say it. But Qian Yuming nodded and sent a voice transmission to tell the whole story. Xiao Hua's face was as heavy as water, and they could not see any reaction, making Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming feel very uneasy. After Qian Yuming finished speaking, Zhan Yu smiled apologetically and said, fellow Taoist Xiao, do you think, can we leave? I just fought with Pu Jianyuan and spent a lot of magic power. How do you calculate it? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming were stunned and immediately came to their senses. They rushed to open their storage bags and took out their respective medicinal pills and handed them over. Give it all to me. Xiao Hua did not even look at their medicinal pills and stretched out his hand and said, this. Zhan Yu hesitated and pleaded, fellow Taoist Xiao, cultivation and other items are secret arts of my sect, please have mercy. Qian Yuming also smiled apologetically. And understood. Xiao Hua took out their storage pouches and probed them with his divine sense. Fellow Taoist Xiang? Zhan Yu was quick-witted. He quickly turned his head and begged in a low voice. Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian were originally on high alert, but when they saw Xiao Hua snatch Zhan Yu's storage bag, a trace of a smile appeared in their eyes. Their vigilance was greatly reduced, and when they saw Zhan Yu's pleading, they only snorted coldly and declined to comment. Zhan Yu and Xiao Hua were only early-stage foundation establishment disciples of a small sect. Aside from medicinal pills, spiritual herbs, and jade slips, they only had a few magic tools. Xiao Hua didn't care about them at all. He swept away all the medicinal pills and very unhappily returned their storage pouches to them. When Qian Yuming saw this, he took the storage pouches and smiled apologetically, fellow Taoist Xiao, I have something here. I don't know if fellow Taoist would like it? As he spoke, he took out a thumb-sized jade bead from his bosom and handed it to Xiao Hua, saying, I's lion tiger beast found this in a dilapidated ruin. I couldn't penetrate it with my divine sense. Although I know it's extraordinary, I don't know what it's used for. Today, I'll give it to fellow Taoist. Very good. Xiaohua looked at it. Although he couldn't see anything, he waved his hand and stored it in his space. He smiled and said, fellow Taoist Qian, you don't need to make a heart oath. You can leave in a while. Ah? Zhan Yu was shocked. He scratched his head and couldn't find anything new. Many thanks, fellow Taoist Xiao. Qian Yuming said happily, I definitely won't say anything. Please rest assured. Fellow Taoist Zhan, make a heart oath. Xiaohua glanced at Zhan Yu and said with a smile. Sigh, Zhan Yu sighed. According to Xiaohua's words, he made a heart oath, saying that he wouldn't say a word about what he saw today. At this time, Xue looked at Ling Jingyi's expression and hurriedly whispered a few words. Xiaohua glanced at Ling Jingyi and said, fellow Taoists, you too should also know that fellow Taoist Ling of Fog Mountain isn't the person you think he is. In the future, don't disturb him. Naturally, we were indeed bewitched by that guy Pu Jianyuan. In the future, we definitely won't dare to come again. Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming said hurriedly. No. Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and looked at Ling Jingyi. Fellow Taoist Ling, send these two fellow Taoists away. Ling Jingyi was still a bit worried and looked at Xiang Yang. Why would Xiang Yang pay attention to him? Xiang Yang looked at the sky. Ling Jingyi sighed and said, Fog Mountain's formation jade pendant is with fellow Taoist Xiao. I also can't open the formation. Which one is it? Xiaohua woke up and patted Pu Jinyuan's storage bag. He took out 2 jade pendants and asked. A trace of greed flashed in Ling Jingyi's eyes, but he still only took his own jade pendant and said, Fei Yun, come and accompany father to send off the guests. Fellow Taoists, please wait a moment. Yes, father. Ling Feiyun was abnormally lively and accompanied Ling Jingyi to send off Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming. Moving his gaze away from Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming's back, Xiang Yang looked at Xiaohua and said in a low voice, Xiaohua, I have something to ask you in a while. Xiaohua understood Xiang Yang's thoughts and nodded. Little brother also has something to ask eldest senior brother. Okay, when fellow Taoist Ling comes back, we'll find a secluded place. Xiang Yang nodded. Not long after, Ling Jingyi brought Ling Feiyun back. Ling Feiyun looked at Xiaohua with surprised eyes without blinking, making Xiaohua feel quite uncomfortable. He glanced at Ling Feiyun and saw that Ling Feiyun was actually happy. He felt even more excited. Feiyun? Ling Jingyi scolded in a low voice. How can you be so rude? Father, this senior brother Xiao is probably the old friend that sister met when she was sent to the Imperial Thunder Sect, right? Senior brother Xiao killed a foundation establishment cultivator with qi refinement cultivation. This is the boy's role model. Ling Feiyun was so excited that he couldn't even speak clearly. Feiyun, this matter ends here, you absolutely can't say another word. Ling Jingyi naturally knew what Xiaohua was thinking and quickly exhorted. Yes, the boy understands. Ling Feiyun quickly replied. My son has just reached the 10th level of qi refinement and hasn't gone out to gain experience. Of course, his knowledge is limited. Please excuse me. Ling Jingyi quickly smiled apologetically and said to Xiang Yang. Feiyun, you're actually at the 10th level of qi refinement, not simple. Xue said with a smile. Of course. Ling Feiyun puffed out his chest and said, however, compared to senior brother Xiao, I'm still far behind. And not bad. Xiaohua touched his nose and said, Uncle, find a quiet room for senior brother Xiang, they have something to talk about. Xue reminded. But Ling Jingyi replied, but his eyes were looking at Xiaohua and said in a low voice, Fellow Xiao, I have a presumptuous request, I don't know if I should say it. Since it's a presumptuous request, then don't say it. Xiaohua said without any trace of politeness. Ling Jingyi was very embarrassed and quickly looked at Xue. At this time, Xue knew that she couldn't avoid it, so she said, Senior brother Xiao, let's listen first. If it's something difficult, just pretend you didn't hear it. Xiaohua saw that the shadow moon and glorious sun were able to awaken Pu Jinyuan's bloodline, so he naturally knew what Ling Jingyi was planning. These things were useless to him, at most, they could help Shui Shui awaken her bloodline. Even if he gave them to Ling Jingyi, Shui Shui could still awaken her bloodline. But the problem was that Ling Jingyi had tricked Xiaohua. That day, Xiaohua didn't even look at the Flying Phoenix Ridge's ancestral artifact and took it out to look at it. That artifact didn't have any tricks on it, but there was a problem with the refining method and there was a mark on it. How could Xiaohua not be angry with Ling Jingyi? But after all, Shui Shui was his lover, and he also promised not to pursue the matter, so when he heard Shui Shui mention it, he nodded slightly. Ling Jingyi's face was happy, and he said with an apologetic smile, "Fellow Xiao must have seen it just now. My Misty Mountains artifact and Flying Phoenix Ridge's artifact can awaken Pu Jinyuan's bloodline. Since that's the case, it can also awaken the bloodline of my Misty Mountains disciples. Therefore, this artifact is incomparably precious to my Misty Mountain. So, I shamelessly want to ask Fellow Xiao for it. I don't know if Fellow Xiao. Oh, my Misty Mountain has a lot of medicinal pills and spiritual herbs. As long as Fellow Xiao takes a fancy to it, you can take it. I absolutely won't refuse. Hehe, can your Misty Mountain have more things than my Imperial Thunder Sect? Xiaohua replied without any trace of politeness. I wouldn't dare, naturally not as much as your Imperial Thunder Sect, but its eyes good intentions. Ling Jingyi said with an apologetic smile. Do you have the pill recipes for Elaine pill and Essence pill? Xiaohua asked. Ling Jingyi was very embarrassed. This? I don't have them. You don't have anything, then what do you want to exchange? Xiaohua's eyes turned, and he said with a smile, I suddenly thought of something. I don't know if you are willing to exchange. Fellow Xiao, please. Ling Jingyi said with pleasant surprise. Hehe, do you still need to say it? Xiaohua waved his hand, and took out the sacrificial refining method that Ling Jingyi gave him before. He rubbed his hand and destroyed it. I won't say what Fellow Ling has done. Take out the artifact and the sacrificial refining method, and I will give you the two artifacts, and the thing you want from Pu Jianyuan. This is impossible. Ling Jingyi's face changed and he waved his hand. That artifact is more precious than Shining Sun and Shadow Moon, and also, Ling Jingyi actually raised his eyes and glanced at Shui Shui. Hehe, Fellow Ling, think about it yourself. Xiaohua said with a smile, it can stimulate the bloodline of Misty Mountain's disciples, and increase their cultivation by a large margin. Moreover, it can also control Flying Phoenix Ridge, and Misty Mountain's strength will immediately double. The growth of strength in the future is immeasurable. Which one do you think is more suitable? Ling Jingyi's face was gloomy. It was unknown what he was thinking. After a long while, he clenched his teeth, raised his head, and said, I agree to this. Great. Xiaohua clapped and said, However, I have a condition? What condition? Xiaohua asked curiously. Chapter 1857. Ling Jingyi bitterly smiled. This condition isn't for my Misty Mountain, but for Shui Shui. When she needs this magic tool in the future, I hope that fellow Taoist Xiao can lend it to her. Shui Shui? Xiaohua was very happy and immediately nodded. I agree to this condition. Good. Ling Jingyi clapped his hand and took out a magic tool that looked like a big seal from his storage pouch. At the same time, he took out an old jade pendant and handed it to Xiaohua. This is the real Glorious Sun, and the one fellow Taoist took before was the real Shadow Moon. This is the method to refine the two magic tools. Xiaohua nodded. After putting the items into his space, he also gave the magic tools called Glorious Sun and Shadow Moon to Ling Jingyi and took out Pu Jinyuan's storage pouch. After Ling Jingyi took everything he needed, he returned it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua glanced at it and put away the storage pouch. Shui Shui, uncle, also has something to say to you. Let's go in. Ling Jingyi didn't put the two magic tools into his storage pouch, but held it in his hand. Shui Shui and Ling Feiyun both stared at it fervently. Shui Shui felt that Ling Jingyi's words to Xiaohua were a bit strange, but she knew that Ling Jingyi was thinking for her, so she felt grateful. When she heard Ling Jingyi call her, she knew that it was related to the true spirit bloodline and very excitedly nodded. After entering the palace, Ling Jingyi led Xiang Yang, Yan Qinglian, and Xiaohua into a quiet room. He handed the control token to Xiang Yang and exited the room himself. He took a deep breath and walked to another quiet room. Ling Feiyun was not in that room, only Xue Xue was there. Xiang Yang looked at Ling Jingyi as he walked out of the quiet room and activated the restriction. He glanced at Yan Qinglian, and the two of them suddenly turned around. Without saying a word, the pressure of a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator pressed down on Xiao Hua. Eldest senior brother? Xiao Hua was shocked. He bent his body and released the Phoenix Dharma body. The Phoenix Dharma body was more than 200 feet large in this quiet room. As it flapped its wings, the restriction in the quiet room flickered. Obviously, it couldn't withstand it. Who are you? Xiang Yang's face turned cold and asked coldly, where did you take over my junior brother Xiao Hua? Possession? Xiao Hua stared blankly for a moment, then he immediately understood, and he laughed bitterly in his heart. Is he meditating? Yan Qinglian increased the pressure and said coldly, don't think that just because you can kill Pu Jianyuan, who is in the middle stage of foundation establishment, you can escape from us. Let me tell you, Pu Jianyuan is only in the middle stage of foundation establishment for a moment. He is far from understanding the abhijna of the middle stage of foundation establishment. With the support of the Phoenix Dharma body, Xiaohua was still able to move freely when facing Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian, two middle-stage foundation establishment experts. However, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, eldest senior martial brother, senior martial sister, you guys really know how to think. This little brother is the genuine Xiaohua. Who would find a qi condensation cultivator like me to possess? How could I not know Xiaohua's cultivation? He is a loose cultivator, how could he have the phoenix bloodline? Moreover, his cultivation is only at the peak of the 12th layer of qi condensation. Not to mention killing Pu Jianyuan, even being able to fight him to a standstill is already not easy. Look at how your excellency is able to remain so calm under the joint attack of us husband and wife. If you didn't possess the body of my poor junior martial brother, then what did you do? Xiang Yang said with a cold snort. Although the Xiao and Xiao were extremely similar to Xiao, Xiaohua heard it clearly and understood what it meant. A wave of warmth flowed through his heart. With a shake of his body, he withdrew the phoenix celestial body back into his body, allowing the pressure of the two great experts to firmly suppress him. How about it? You have nothing to say, right? Xiang Yang said hatefully, I was originally wild with joy when you came back, but then I was a bit bewildered. Just how dangerous is Mingxi's wind tunnel? Even nascent soul cultivators don't dare to enter, yet you were actually able to come back safely. This is truly an impossible matter. However, since you are I's junior martial brother, being able to come back safely, I am naturally happy. I can't not look forward to your return. But now that you've just started to gain experience, you've already exposed yourself. Tell me, which sect are you from, which cultivator are you? If I have some impression of you, I can still let you reincarnate. Otherwise, I'll extract your soul and crush it bit by bit. You won't be able to live in this world. Xiang Yang spoke for a while, but Xiaohua still didn't answer. Xiang Yang's expression became increasingly malevolent. Just as he was about to flare up, he saw Xiaohua shake his body, and the Phoenix Dharma body flew out again. Damn it, senior martial brother, you should release your pressure a bit. Your junior martial brother isn't resisting, yet you're still suppressing your pressure to death. How can your junior martial brother speak? Xiang Yang glanced at Yan Qinglian, and the two looked at each other in dismay. It was obvious that they had forgotten about this. If I release my pressure, wouldn't you be able to? Xiang Yang had just spoken when he saw Xiaohua clap his hand, and the cloud-suppressing seal flew out of the space. He smiled and said, Senior martial brother, even if there is pressure, junior martial brother can still fight back. Forget it. Seeing this, Xiang Yang looked at Yan Qinglian, and they both withdrew their pressure. However, the two's expressions were still vigilant, and they distanced themselves from Xiaohua. Xiaohua also withdrew the cloud-suppressing seal, looked around, and found a praying mat to sit on. He smiled very leisurely and said, Senior martial brother, junior martial brother is junior martial brother. I've definitely not been possessed by anyone. If you have any questions, Feel free to ask. Xiang Yang looked at Xiao Hua's appearance and shook his head slightly. I know that you have nothing to fear. You've possessed my junior martial brother Zhao's body, so naturally, you've also merged with his memories. Whatever I ask you, isn't it the same as asking junior martial brother Xiao? So you're saying that after possession, no one will discover it no matter what? Xiao Hua's eyes lit up as he asked. Xiang Yang smiled bitterly. From what I see, I'm afraid they won't discover it. Then isn't it bad? Junior martial brother has no way to prove that I've not been possessed. Xiao Hua spread his hands and said very regretfully. Seeing Xiao Hua's almost roguish appearance, Yan Qinglian immediately thought of Xiao Hua's appearance when he plundered Zhan Yu and Qian Yuming. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Actually, it's not too difficult. Although after possession, no matter if it's appearance or mental cultivation method, they'll be the same as before, but their character and temper should be the same after possession. They definitely won't be exactly the same as before. But junior martial brother Zhao's appearance. I don't see anything strange. However, we haven't had many opportunities to see junior martial brother Xiao, so we can't judge right away. Xiang Yang continued. This is really not easy to handle. Xiao Hua really didn't know how to solve this matter. He smiled and said, Junior martial brother also doesn't know how to explain the origin of my cultivation to senior martial brother. That's the Phoenix Dharma body? It's also a divine ability that I obtained from the netherworld. Senior martial brother, do as you see fit. Sigh, Xiang Yang also smiled bitterly. Previously, he had been hoping that Xiao Hua would be able to establish his foundation during this experiential learning so that he could raise his cultivation. But when he saw Xiao Hua's cultivation suddenly become so high, his heart was once again on guard. To be honest, he also didn't know how to handle it. Qinglian, what do you think? That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.